Just a few film nerds breaking out of a rut, drooling over cinema that's hard and uncut. Stick us in your ear, thrill to this month's picks, and come and listen in, we're measuring flicks.
We're rolling.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Measuring Flicks. My name is Carl.
I'm Max Peter.
That was really fast.
Yeah, what? That's Carl Hartley, and I'm Max Peterson, and we're here today to talk to you about 1991's Night on Earth, directed by...
we're talking about Night on Earth. That's not Louis B. Armstrong. That's supposed to be...
It's supposed to be Tom Waits?
Yeah.
Well, that wasn't
Son of
at
a
all.
bitch.
I think Tom Waits is more like... what is it? He's that, like... And I know that there was a man, he had a leg. It's very like...
It's much more like a carton of cigarettes that were smoked.
But it's so
through,
weird,
like,
though, because I love Tom Waits. Every once in a while, you'll get the Tom Waits where he goes from like, I'm singing a song, and then you'll get like, like really high, like, hey, and then there's, when you get young Tom Waits, you get like, and there's a jasmine I know.
It's weird, right? Yeah.
On a
I like him.
I know, me too. Yeah. And I love when you go from album to album. You're like, oh, okay. Wait, like if you go and listen to Heart of Saturday Nights is one of his early croon, or Closing Time is his first album. Yeah, it's where he still has a voice. So you listen to that and it's like, and I say goodnight to you. And you're like, okay, cool. Let's put on the next album. What's the next album? The next one's like, and you're like, holy shit. In case you guys were wondering,
yes.
Tom Waits did the soundtrack to this film. And
it wasn't just a random, I'm going to do a really bad Louis B. Armstrong. Oh, just kidding. It's Tom Waits.
It's secretly Tom Waits. Yeah, Tom Waits did the soundtrack to this. And what do you think? What did you think?
Well,
let's
just go right into it.
Let's just talk about the soundtrack really quick. What do you think of the Tom Waits soundtrack? I fucking dug it.
I loved it. I want it on vinyl. Like, it's a great soundtrack. It's
spot on for the film too.
Yeah, I think so. I think with each of the 5 like vignettes, it ties the movie together.
It does.
Much like the dialogue sort of does. There are beats and moments in the individual conversations that sort of mirror and echo. But I think it's without the Tom Waits soundtrack, like sort of bolstering all of that and making a through line, it connects the whole movie together. That and it just makes me feel good to listen to Tom Waits.
Yeah.
His voice and his style of music does something to my insides, which is it's a very, I'm not spiritual, but in a sort of way, it has a real effect on, and it makes me want to like listen to more music, and it makes me want to write music. His voice is we were making fun of it earlier, but there's no other voice like it.
No, I mean, he's one of my 4 favorite musicians. There's a few albums in this world that will like captivate me to the point, a lot of times you put music on kind of like oral wallpaper. There's a few albums that I cannot not listen to, where I just stop everything and listen. And it's like In the Airplane Over the Sea by Neutral Milk Hotel, but Rain Dogs by Tom Waits. You throw Rain Dogs on, and I'm like, nope, shut up, don't talk to me for an hour. I gotta
Conversation
listen to this.
Take the phone off the hook.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we do that nowadays.
Actually, if Mule Variations, I wrote the first time I wrote a screenplay, my first ever screenplay that I wrote. I spent like almost 3 weeks just listening to that album, and then I spent the last 2 days of writing where I was writing like 10-hour days just in this like white hot heat finishing it. I listened to just 2 songs on that album. Come On Up to the House, I played that back when iTunes still had play counters. I played it like 400 times in 2 days. I just listened to Come On Up to the House over and over and over again. It was like a form of madness, but it was amazing.
I haven't even listened to Scenes from an Italian Restaurant that many times my entire life.
Okay, yeah.
Right,
Night on Earth is going to be, I think this will be really interesting to talk about because it presents itself an interesting like segmented structure so that we can talk about there are 5 vignettes. The basic premise is it's all stories about cab drivers picking up a customer and bringing a customer to a location, and the film is essentially what happens in the cab on those drives 5 times in 5 different cities on Earth at night.
All at the same time, but because of the different time zones you get different times of day. It's really interesting.
It's super cool because LA you get dusk.
It's going in tonight.
And then
Helsinki, it's sunrise.
Yeah.
But it's happening at the same time on Earth.
Right, because the different time zones allow you to shift in time, which is super cool. So yeah, I think the best way to do this will be to do one section at a time.
Sure.
But before we get into that, did you like the movie, Karl?
Okay. Because this movie is sort of is compartmentalized in a way. Mm-hmm. The movie as a whole, I thought was like okay.
Okay.
But there were two segments in particular that I thought were absolutely brilliant.
Okay.
And made me enjoy. Like, I watched this movie twice, and I sort of like dug into all the supplemental materials. Like, we've watched a lot of movies that are very visual from like visual directors.
Yeah.
Where this movie. And I haven't actually watched a lot of Jim Jarmusch, as it turns out. Mm-hmm. But I feel like he's more of the actor sort of director. He's more of, at least in this anyway.
He loves actors.
It's just about the words and capturing the moment with just that actor. And he wrote a lot of this specifically for the people that are playing the parts.
Yes.
Like Roberto Benigni in particular, and the guy that plays Helmet, and Yo-Yo.
You have the same version that I do.
Yeah,
right?
I have
both
the
have the Criterion
yeah.
DVD.
So
okay.
I would say that overall, like the movie, like I get the premise of it. I'm so happy that a movie like this exists, especially the time that came out in 1991. This is like right around the Clerks. Like Kevin Smith doing his indie thing. This is within 5 years of like Clerks, within 5 years of like Swingers, like Jon Favreau and Kevin Smith, and even Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez.
If you watch the end of Clerks, he thanks Jim Jarmusch in the credits.
That's excellent.
Yeah, so like I think it's Down by Law. No, Permanent Vacation is Jim Jarmusch's first film, the first like big release. There's one before it, but it's like a short. So Permanent Vacation and then Down by Law, which stars Tom Waits, those came out like not back to back, but within like a year or two of each other, and they were. He's a famous like outsider director.
Well, yeah, he even like to date hasn't made a movie that the budget was more than like $5 or $10 million. I
think his highest budget film was Only Lovers Left Alive, which we'll watch at the end of this. At the end of this month, yeah. But I mean, I noted a bunch of films that he revisits certain themes again and again. But like, what strikes me about his films is even in the late 2000s. Okay, so he's like he doesn't like to take investor money or studio
he'll like
money,
self-finance
and that's why it takes him like sometimes 8 years to make a movie, because he's like self-financing. He lines up his own distributors so that people can't tell him what to do, so he can make movies like this.
Right.
Like, can you imagine a Hollywood studio greenlighting this today?
And that's what I can't. Well, that's what I was saying. Like, I love the fact that a movie like this exists, and that it can be made, and someone like Jim Jarmusch can make it.
Right.
Part way through watching, about halfway through, I think it was in the Paris segment, I'm like, am I enjoying this because I'm supposed to enjoy it because it's Jim Jarmusch and it's this independent thing?
Yeah. Or
am I like enjoying this because the movies like this get a lot of shit?
Paris. Which two sections did you really like?
My two favorite.
It's got to be New York. One of them.
It's New York.
New York
oh my
is
god,
what's your
it's
second
amazing.
One?
The Roberto Benigni one, because he's
Italy.
He's my spirit animal. So
really?
like, yeah, it's the most ridiculous of all of them.
I'd say Italy is the weakest one for me.
I think that it is the weakest one, but I enjoyed it.
Okay,
the most.
okay. So this is.
But Helsinki is heartbreaking and amazing, and I love anything that's sort of set in that like that snowy environment. They all have like they look like their environment. The guys in that cab, they're smoking.
Yeah.
They smoke cigarettes differently than the Americans smoke cigarettes.
There's cigarettes in every single one, but they all smoke differently. And I would like to point out that the only two cars that had noticeable car trouble were both the American cars. The European cars all ran fine.
They all ran just fine.
But no, I got you off track and I didn't want to. You were saying in the middle of the Paris section, you were asking yourself, do I like this because I'm supposed to like it?
Yeah.
So continue with that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Because it started like... I noticed it in the Paris segment because I actually initially had problems right off the bat with the LA segment. Especially with Winona Ryder's dialogue. It was like it felt written like now this is the monologue, and the way she was written seemed a little it seemed written. Like the lines where it didn't come across very natural to me. Like she says like a lot, or it's just the manner it just played. I was enjoying it, but at the same time I was noticing a lot of like just awkwardness about it.
So
the way that she was speaking, I don't know if I think it was a mix of performance and writing.
Okay.
And I just didn't really care for it, but I was enjoying what was happening because I'm aware of like 1991 independent filmmaking, like what the process of filmmaking, and being like someone that acts in things from time to time. You can tell right away that this is made for actors, and this is like, if I had an audition next week, maybe I'm going to pull a monologue from Night on Earth.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? You get excited about that. I'm like, ooh, there's some really fun stuff to say in this. Mm-hmm. But I was like kind of like twitchy about the first one. But then in Paris, when the blind woman gets in the car and he starts asking her questions about being blind, I'm like, has he never met a blind person before?
And he does say at one point, I've never met a blind person before.
I thought that, and then he said it later. I'm like, oh, well, he hasn't. Because he's asking some really stupid questions. And then their banter back and forth was a little bit, I don't know, it felt again kind of like she's being extra shitty, and it didn't seem as natural as I wanted. Where the Helsinki one is just like
natural as all
hell.
It's
and I think some of it too was like the one that's in all English is the first one.
There are two.
Well, there are two. The second one is also, but he has broken like use like Helmet is like.
The only one that's
immigrant.
all in English is in Los Angeles.
Is Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And I don't speak any other language than American, than English.
Yeah.
And sometimes not very well. So I don't know what nuances. I don't know if those actors if their performance is any good, because I don't get the inflection or the nuance or the...
Yeah, foreign film does always tend to have like a bump for me. Like it's like the foreign film mystique, where you can't exactly tell if their delivery is weird, because it to us is, or to me and you, I guess. I'm sure there's like weird like Americans who are like, well, I studied Japanese culture for 50 years.
Right.
But to us, it's exotic. So they're like rattling off. I mean, the Italian one.
Right.
Like that's the most rapid fire Italian I've ever seen, and his performance is so lively, and I'm swept up by this barrage of words that I don't understand. Obviously I've got my subtitles on, so I'm reading the subtitles and I'm swept up by his energy, but I have no idea if his dialogue is being delivered naturally or not. No idea.
So yeah, he'd be sounding like the Micro Machines guy. Like who knows?
He does have So the all of the other segments have a little bit of a cushion because they New York, I guess, is the only one that is primarily in English.
I love New York.
New York is
the New
amazing.
York segment's one of my favorite things that I have seen in recent years.
I think it's probably my favorite of the five, but I do like to take the film as a whole.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, so you haven't seen a bunch of Jim Jarmusch?
I haven't. I watched.
You've seen Dead Man, I assume.
Dead Man and Broken Flowers.
The Bill Murray one?
Yeah, the Bill Murray one.
Okay.
And I saw Coffee and Cigarettes when it came out, and I was like in middle school or high school or something, so didn't get it at all.
He's I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but I would say Jim Jarmusch is probably my favorite director. But a lot of what I like about him is he makes films. He likes to his films draw on all the films that he loves, and the films that he loves are like old art house films from like the 40s, and that's what my dad watched growing up, so I have like a nostalgia thing.
You have that whole backlog of enjoying that stuff.
No one makes art films anymore, really. Like there are the festival films, but they even the new things that are hailed as like an art house masterpiece, you watch those now and they have that touch of the 5 Easy Steps to Writing a Successful Screenplay feel. Like everyone calls Little Miss Sunshine like an art film. It's not.
Oh, it is certainly not.
It's like an offbeat indie movie, but an art film? No. And Jarmusch makes stuff that reeks and smacks and is radiantly art.
Yeah. Interesting they said the way you phrased that, because when I was trying to wrap my brain around like Jim Jarmusch and how I was enjoying it, I think I mentioned a couple podcasts ago about it was about Valley Girl. Like I think my tastes are changing, and like the broad comedies don't really. And the same thing can happen with like somebody that likes coffee. So okay, so this is going to make sense.
Go,
trust me.
Take me down the rabbit hole.
So I think a lot of people, and with myself included, Jim Jarmusch might be a bit of an acquired taste.
Okay,
because you haven't really experienced this level of independent film and that quality of writing. So it is a little jarring at first because you're like, I feel like I should be bored, but I'm not bored, and I also feel like I should be enjoying this, but am I enjoying this because I should be because of what it is? Now, the way I thought about it in my brain, it's like going from like at the start of your film appreciation being you're drinking McDonald's Frappuccinos, like super sugary with like whipped cream on top, right? And then you back it up and you start watching something like a Quentin Tarantino movie and you're like, all right, so you're going to cut the sugar, you're going to add a little bit more of something, and so you keep backing that up, and then you get to Jim Jarmusch and it's like you're just chewing raw coffee beans.
Yeah, Jarmusch.
You know what I mean?
I think the analogy there, for anyone who's seen The Limits of Control, you should really watch that movie.
Okay.
If you want, it's not necessary. We should watch that movie together and not talk about it on the podcast.
Okay.
But it's a movie of his, and I think Jarmusch is best described by that character orders the same coffee drink everywhere he goes. He visits like several world cities, and he always orders 2 espressos in separate cups.
Interesting.
So yeah, that movie is like pure metaphor and symbolism. There's I can't find a plot in it, but it's beautiful to watch. But anyway,
and I also felt like if you were to compare Jim Jarmusch to like a wine, so you would have somebody like Armageddon would be like a really jammy like American wine.
That's like Lucky Duck.
That's like Lucky
like a
Duck.
Bottle of Lucky Duck.
And then you'd have somebody like David Lynch, who is like this really weird like French exotic grape that's fucking cellar aged for a while.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
When then Jim Jarmusch is like you're gonna go to France and just lick the ground.
Really? You think Jarmusch goes farther? For me, Lynch is a bit more extreme. Although
Lynch is you're expecting a bottle of wine and it's Diet Pepsi in the bottle. You're like, the fuck?
It's a wine bottle. Yeah, it's a wine bottle with Diet Pepsi with an alien baby fermented,
inside
like
of it,
fermenting inside it. Yeah.
But no, I felt like he doesn't go like that. But that's where my brain was trying to like catch up to going back into the 90s, like early 90s being 1991.
Right.
But I'm like, no, it's a bit of a step back into simplicity without being simple-minded.
Have you seen Slacker, Richard Linklater's first movie?
Yes.
This feels a lot like the opening of Slacker to me. Where the guy gets in, I think it's a cab, right? He gets in a car from the airport and then drives him to his house. But like the cold open of Slacker is like 15 minutes long, and it's just the guy in the back seat just monologuing about nothing.
About nothing, right?
There's no anything there. He's just like talking about stuff, and he gets off track, and then he'll start a new thought, and you're like, are we not gonna? Oh, I guess not. Okay.
We're not going. Okay.
So yeah, and like Kevin Smith has said in interviews repeatedly, I love that they all get lumped together because they went in like 3 different directions. The 91, like the late 80s, early 90s Miramax kids, basically.
Yes. Right.
So they all started by making similar films and then jettisoned in totally strange, different disparate directions.
Right.
Yeah, but they all are iconic now. That year, that time, that place, that production company, those creative people, all left an indelible mark on cinema.
Oh, yes.
Forever. Like, it's so fucked up. You'd very rarely get that clumping of insane talent.
It was just sort of a moment that happened.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, like, for example, Richard Linklater, he makes what I would call like big budget experimental films, like Boyhood and A Scanner Darkly. Like, people give him money and trust him to do stuff that will make its money back, but still be kind of weird.
Right.
And then you get Kevin Smith, who basically like became a weird, and I don't mean this as an insult because
no.
It works for him. It's he's made his own brand where he becomes like this self-parodizing, essentially like clown filmmaker.
Kind of,
even
right?
with like
Kevin
Tusk.
Smith is almost like the the character. He is sort of the silent Bob.
Yeah, and you can't divorce his films from him.
No.
Like, you can watch a Tarantino film and be like, wow, what an amazing film. It was made by Quentin Tarantino. But when you're watching a Kevin Smith film, he's in every frame. Like, even Tusk, when you watch Tusk, even that movie, which is such a fucking departure. Well, people say it's a departure, but when you watch Red State, you can see that that's the same guy.
Yeah.
But, like, when you watch Tusk, you're like, holy shit. But it's so married to him as a creator and the story of how it was made.
It's a universe thing.
It absolutely is. So then you get that. You get Tarantino, who became like I want to say like cool cinema or like chic cinema,
He's the
darling.
Hip,
yeah.
Hip cinema. He is the band apart. He's the black jacket with black tie.
He
sunglasses.
embodies cool American cinema. When you say like you're like, oh man, I watched it was the coolest fucking movie, or like it was hip is a great word for it. That's him. He defines like that cool film.
Yep.
Jim Jarmusch, I think, does something similar to an extent, but his coolness is in how far beyond the edge he goes with his movies, where it's just like you're watching.
I feel like this was a good introduction movie.
To Jarmusch? Definitely. He has much wilder films than this and tamer films. This is a good like middle ground.
Middle ground, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when we get to Only Lovers Left Alive, I would say that's probably, for me, that was his most mainstream film. But yeah, I like that he's done this a couple times. Like Coffee and Cigarettes is another.
It's another sort of analogy.
An anthology film.
An anthology.
Where he shot shorts over a long period of time.
It was like 17 years or something on Coffee and Cigarettes.
I don't know when the last one.
It was a long time.
The last segment with it's not Tilda Swinton. It's Cate Blanchett. That's fairly recent. That's like that was shot in the 2000s. I think this, but then you go back and who's the Italian guy you like so much?
Oh, Roberto Benigni?
He's in the first segment of Coffee and Cigarettes. He's the espresso guy who has like 15 espressos on the table and he's shaking really bad. But yeah, so for what that time period was, Jarmusch always says that remember we talked last week, we talked about how David Lynch was saying that Eraserhead's not a film, it's a mood.
Yes.
Jarmusch, I think this film specifically, we'll start talking about this movie rather than his whole oeuvre and all of these filmmakers, but like,
I think it was important to place him though, because it is such a unique.
I like the way that you put him on a continuum of like acquired taste filmmakers, because it is true. Like cinema people, if you go and watch like the new the Rock
Rampage
movie is,
or whatever.
Oh, is that the new one?
Yeah.
I was gonna say Jumanji, but I guess that's outdated because he does a movie a week.
He did that
now.
6 months ago.
Yeah, so you get like you go and watch Rampage. If you watch Rampage and then go watch Les Samurai, like Melville's film, you're gonna be like, what in the fuck is this?
Yeah.
So there's like the popcorn movie, and then there's this summer I went on a Jarmusch binge, and for whatever reason I either had to be drinking a single malt scotch or an espresso in it, not like but like demi-tasse cup,
right?
With
the
spoon,
whole 9 yards.
Fold the crema back into the espresso. It's just there's a feel. There's a weird like artsy feel. Yeah, you have to feel like you live in what's that in New York City, 1960s and 70s. Lou Reed was part of it. The Village. What was it called? Fuck. You know what I'm talking about? There's a specific art movement, and actually Jarmusch came up in it when he was before he was a filmmaker, he was a poet, and he grew up basically in that time and place. So everything he
feel
does,
like it's that.
Yeah, you're imbued with that like Velvet Underground feel constantly.
I mean, I'm a fan of it, and I can't. Yeah.
All right, so let's go section by section.
Do it.
The first section is Los Angeles. I only wrote down like the primary stars.
Oh, that's fine.
The driver and the passengers. And I did for the Paris section. I didn't bother to write down the names of the first two guys, although they have a really clever French
we'll get to that when we get to that.
Yeah. So Winona Ryder plays the driver, whose name is Corky, and Gina Rowlands plays her passenger, Victoria, who's a casting director.
Yeah.
She like goes and scouts talent essentially. So what did you think? What did you think of the intro? Because this one is actually led into.
Yeah, this is led into a little bit longer than the rest of them.
Right.
Well, we all have every segment has its establishing shot of where you are. And a couple of like, this is a city. This is what time it is.
There's we get a shot of 5 clocks on the wall, and it's
and it pushes into the
it's Los Angeles, New York. It's like in an airport where you have all the world time zones, and then it pushes in on the city. The clock.
Oh, you're talking about that beginning?
No, I'm just saying this is our normal title card. Rather than doing like the Tarantino title card, this is what we're doing instead. We punch in on the clock for the city we're gonna go watch.
I loved that. By the way.
And then the clock turns into a globe. The globe zooms us to the city, and then the city lights up.
Opens up.
It's so cool. But this actually has like the opening credits is like a spinning planet.
Yeah.
What did you think of that? Because part of me was ready to write down like, ooh, boo, 1991, shitty special effects, but I actually liked it. Yeah, me too.
It had this weird sort of not Danny Elfman. It felt
it does. It feels like
Ed Wood.
Yes,
in a way.
Who's the guy who does Robert Zemeckis, like his like Coraline or Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh yeah,
Nightmare on Film. God, Nightmare Before Christmas.
Nightmare on Film Street.
That's a podcast.
I know.
Anyway, no. So it's it felt claymation.
Yeah,
but I don't think it is. I think it's
liked it because it felt timeless. Actually,
yeah, absolutely.
It felt whimsical to me,
because
and with
Tom Waits behind it.
And Tom Waits' score behind it. But also the font selection for the title cards had a bit of a not cartoonish, but it felt a little like weird.
Yeah,
askew in a way.
It feels dreamlike, and when you put Tom Waits behind anything,
you're immediately transported.
Nothing is a mistake anymore. It's all an artistic
all intentional. And actually, once we move from the spinning globe onto that wall with the splash of light on it with the 5 clocks.
Well, we go from a planet in space to a globe.
Yes.
And then we do like a really close-in zoom, and then we go to the clocks. Yeah.
But my first thought was, holy shit, it feels just like it came out of the 50s, like late 50s, early 60s. Like the color palette, everything felt like that sort of studio, almost not like musical, but it felt like we're going to go into a Gene Kelly number or something. Like it had that sort of dream sequence of any of those big like MGM musical numbers, like from those big Broadway shows. They would have this really weird, surreal like way of getting into them. And that felt a lot like that, especially when it pushed into the clock for Los Angeles.
It does. It does feel very.
It felt old Hollywood to me, like just the way it was set up and the color of it, and
the shifting colors too.
Yeah. So
I did write down the color of every place basically. What was New York is like a sea green. LA was orange. So, and one thing I wanted to point out is he uses color really, really intentionally. Limits of Control.
But it's subtle too, though. There are definite shifts in color.
Yeah, but the color of the wall, the lighting that he's throwing on those 5 clocks. The weirdest thing for me is, without saying anything, without being like gauche and drawing attention to it, every color he picks for every single city is immediately evocative and puts you in mind of the city you're about to go to. It's the I don't, and you know what? No, I do want to be like nitpicky about.
No, do
like
it.
This.
Absolutely. Is your favorite drawing?
There's a line coming up in the 3rd section where we find out a blind woman is going to movies, and the cab driver scoffs, and he's like, "What do you see at the movies?" And she's like, "I don't see movies. I feel movies," and that is very in keeping with like I would call it like Jarmusch's thesis.
Sure.
For all of his, he does a lot of stuff. He does films. He does documentaries. He has
like music videos.
He's in a band.
Yeah.
I have several of his records on vinyl. Squirrel. They're like a noise rock Americana like folk band. Very cool. Very strange.
Dig it.
But yeah. So he describes himself. The first time I ever heard the word dilettante, he was saying that. A lot of people use the word dilettante in a negative way. It means you know a little about a lot of artistic, specifically like culture stuff. So like, oh yes, I like opera, but you're not a fucking like diehard.
But you know enough to be like carry a conversation and you know a few.
Right, exactly. You enjoy opera.
Right.
It's something that you can enjoy, but you also enjoy painting, and you also enjoy like classical music, and you know a lot about like film history.
Like being a Renaissance man, but more.
Yes, but you're not like an expert.
You're not an expert
in anything.
A Renaissance person.
Right.
Is just legitimately really good and deep dive on everything. Where is it
dilettante?
Dilettante.
Yeah, it's sort
Thank
of
you for word of the day.
It's sort of like casual, like taking a taste of all of the arts that the world has to offer. And he says in several interviews, he interviews really well. If you like film or music, or if you just like smart people, watching him interview, you're like, holy shit, I need to go and read a clever person book.
Right. I need to look at the nonfiction section.
But he's always said that he feels that is a positive thing for a citizen in the world. He's like, take a taste.
Why not?
Right, yeah. Exactly. I talked about it last week. My friend Adam just got me into opera, and I didn't think it was going to be for me.
You're like, holy shit, I'm crying.
Yeah, lo and behold, once you and I'm not like, oh, I'm reading all these books on opera, but I have books on beekeeping on my kitchen table. I've got like books on chess upstairs that I checked out from the library. Just like taking a taste.
It should be part of the human experience to dip your toe into as many.
To live broadly
in many pools as you want to.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
It's I've found
the ones that are your favorite find you.
Yeah, and I think in a way you can find even the stuff that you don't like, rather than the things that you're going to become crazy passionate about and do deep dives and become an expert on are going to find you. But in the process, you'll find a way to experience all art and culture that you encounter more deeply.
And those little things will inform the big things.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
wow. So the first one, Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, yeah, but the reason I was
No.
The reason I was getting to it was the color.
Okay, no, I got you.
Like,
I wasn't busting your balls.
No, yeah,
it's hard not to talk about this kind of movie without getting a little deep.
Yeah, to digress slightly.
Well, you almost have to, because of the nature of the conversations in these cab rides are of no consequence. They're people that meet for one brief moment. They're together for 10 minutes on this earth and then probably never see each other again.
Right.
So even if they were talking about the most important thing on the planet, it doesn't fucking matter.
And at the same time...
But at the same time, it does. Because
nothing is more important.
Each person will leave that encounter having either taken something away from that experience or not, but something will have changed in that person.
Right. We talked before we started recording. The podcasts for this month that we've done have involved a lot more work than the other ones have.
Yeah.
These are demanding films. They're asking a lot of us, but I feel like we're getting a lot more out of them. So, like, when you watch Drive Angry, you're not going to be like...
I watched it. And that's about it.
Like, we can sit here and talk about just the film, but like the reason we're going far afield is with Drive Angry, you're not like, and when Nicolas Cage was drinking from that Jack Daniels bottle, did you know Jack Daniels blah blah blah
right,
blah blah.
Exactly.
It's totally fucking irrelevant. The film is all that matters. But this touches on so much. Like, it touches on this broad, like the full breadth of human experience.
It's the human experience. That's why it's Night on Earth, it's Night on Planet. This one, it's the whole experience of the film is that.
Right. So each short does kind of follow a similar pattern. Before anything happens, we're given like what in fiction would be called, or we'd be giving like flavor text. Right. Of the city. It basically we get several
kind of like stills in a way.
Yeah, but I mean, we get shots of the first one's LA, and we get, what I love about it is we're not just getting like establishing shot Los Angeles.
Right, you're not getting the Hollywood sign, you're not getting like
and we never get the big flyover. We never see the whole city.
No, you're seeing
city.
Like the corner of a park, the corner of like a beat up outdoor diner with the full trash can. You're seeing a couple of payphones.
Yeah, there's payphones in the first two.
The Rocky and Bullwinkle thing.
Statue. You see it, but what I wrote down, I was trying to figure out how to articulate it, because it's weird. We always see not like the seedy side or the seamy side or the bad side, but you see
like the lived-in side that's not on the travel brochures.
Right, parts of the city that have like lived hard, and like for example, Paris. When we get to Paris, like the Paris that he shows us looks like no image of Paris you've ever seen.
No,
but it's all shots from Paris. Yeah. He shot on location everywhere. So when we see LA, there's no glitz and glamour. It's like you see like
you're like downtown LA. You're going from the airport to
and it's chipped like chipped away paint and like a cracked window. And what I wrote down, I think it was in the Paris section, or no, it was in Helsinki. I finally figured out how I wanted to articulate it, and I said Jim Jarmusch is showing us the parts of the city that he thinks are beautiful, and letting us linger long enough to decide whether we think they're beautiful or not. It's amazing.
It's a good way of saying it.
Because like when I first met my wife, Bird, she would take pictures of like rust, like stuff that was rusted out, and I'm like, well, why aren't you taking pictures of like these beautiful landscapes? And she's like, well, I think these are more interesting. So in a weird way, once you don't really get it during the LA section, you start to understand in New York, and by Paris, when you're watching those like images of what Jim Jarmusch thinks is Paris, you're like, oh my god, like that. The Paris one is it's that little like subcompact car shot past like the edge of a building, and the way that the shot is composed, it's like looking at a painting on film, and it's so amazing. You're like, can we just stay here?
Can we stay there?
Can I just the one that really like swept my breath away was Helsinki though.
When he's driving around I think it's their government buildings. When he's driving around
that main square,
trying to keep himself awake. I'm like, I want to go to there. I want to go there. I want to walk around. I want to smoke all the cigarettes.
Oh my god! For me,
I still haven't smoked since I quit. All these movies we're watching are like really hard.
Constant. I felt
smoking.
Really bad watching this one because I was like, I wonder if he's off. I wonder if he's smoking right now.
I really wanted to, man.
Especially Winona Ryder.
Winona Ryder's chain smoking, and there's something about those '90s cigarettes. I'm telling you, man.
They smoked different back then.
They smoked different back then.
It was a classier class of smoker.
Oh my god, it's not like 1950s classy when there was. I mean, this is like a whole other like grungy but cool.
Yeah.
Like you have the Zippo, the pink, the whole thing.
Everyone in this movie who smokes a cigarette is secretly Kurt Cobain smoking a cigarette.
No, they not even secretly. They're all fucking Kurt
They're
Cobain
all Kurt
smoking
Cobain smoking a cigarette.
Like, God damn it.
You want, yeah. I don't smoke. I was like, I should go get a pack.
I should go get a pack.
I could probably just smoke one pack, right? That wouldn't
all right.
That wouldn't lead into like a lifetime of destructive smoking habits. So Winona Ryder is stunningly young.
She's very young, and she's really fresh too. Like I don't want to say not good, but she's.
Is that what you mean though? Just say it.
I mean, it is. It's kind of hard to watch her because knowing what she's capable of and what she has done, and like her track record, she has some hits and misses, but overall, I mean, Winona Ryder is. You know,
a stellar actress.
In this, I'm like, shit, she's reading lines that. And again, I think I said this at the top of the show. I'm like, I didn't know if it was a mix of bad acting and bad screenwriting, or if it was one more than the other. And I think it may have been more performance issues than anything. But she's also very new at that time. I don't know what she would have done prior to this in '91.
Addams Family. That's '80s, right?
Addams Family.
Yeah, isn't she?
Oh, you mean Beetlejuice? That was 95 or 96.
She doesn't. No. Who's the girl who plays Wednesday Addams?
Oh my God, that's someone. Christina Ricci, not Christina Ricci.
Yeah, it is Christina Ricci. Beetlejuice is 96. You said?
Yeah.
So is this
after?
This can't be her first credit. It can't be.
God,
no way.
I feel like that should be an IMDb question.
There was while you do that, there was a point about Jarmusch I wanted to make earlier but didn't. One thing that
it felt. I'm sorry. Winona Ryder's performance to me felt like a college student auditioning with their first monologue ever.
Okay,
is what it felt like to me. Like it wasn't horrible, but it wasn't quite there. Like you could see the potential and talent there, but it was just read enough.
Okay, I disagree a little, but I see what you're saying. Absolutely, it comes across as a little stilted and a little not
like playing a character.
Yes, like you have a tone that you're trying to hit, and you force yourself into that tone rather than going naturalistically. Yeah, I can see what you're saying there. Really quick, my point about Jarmusch though was he got his start in the '80s, and he still does not make big budget movies. His last film, Patterson, was again He got outside the Hollywood machine funding. He got his own distribution deals and stuff. But this is a director who Bill Murray will come and work with him.
Without even with like drop of a hat.
Yeah, you pick up the phone, not you, but like big name actors. They pick up the phone and Jim Jarmusch is on the other end and he's like, "Hey, you want to be in my movie?" Actually, his voice is amazing. If you hear him talk, it's like he looks like his voice would sound like mine, but it's like, "Hey, do you want to be in my movie?"
Right?
It's the deepest voice you've ever heard.
I've got like a 1978 Chevy, runs just fine.
It sounds exactly like, yeah, that's actually a really good Jim Jarmusch right there.
Thank you.
But yeah, so like we get Johnny Depp right near the like apex of his fame. You get Tilda Swinton repeatedly working with him, Bill Murray, Tom Hiddleston, Adam Driver worked with Jim Jarmusch after Star Wars.
Yeah.
In Patterson, which is like Jim Jarmusch doesn't put together like, okay, well, we're gonna pay you $25 million to be in my movie, because he can't afford that. When actors come work with him, it's because they want to work with Jim Jarmusch.
Yeah.
Like, go ahead.
So I have to hand you my Karl Knows Anything About Movies card today, and ask for it back at some point.
Okay.
First of all, I should know better than saying that Beetlejuice was in the late 90s.
I knew it was in the 80s. I knew it was in the 80s.
Before it was like 88, 89, this whole Batman Beetlejuice. Yeah, because Tim Burton in the beginning of his whole jam. But prior to this, she had been in Beetlejuice, notably Heathers.
Okay, so Heathers and Beetlejuice predate this. Heathers is awesome. Go
Welcome Home, Roxy Carmichael.
Never seen it.
And Edward Scissorhands.
Oh my God.
And Mermaids.
Edward Scissorhands is the movie immediately before this. Is that correct?
Yeah, 1990.
Wow.
And Mermaids too was the year before that. Then she's in with Cher. So yeah, she had already done like fucking Heathers, man.
Yeah, Heathers is great. That's a great movie, and I never run into people who've seen it. I'm always like, have you seen Heathers? Is awesome. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it.
There is the musical now too.
Here's my note.
There's a song, "I Love My Dead Gay Son." I'm not even joking.
Here's my note on her performance in Night on Earth.
Okay.
I think that rather than your reading of it, which I think is totally valid, because I think especially in a Jim Jarmusch movie, everyone is allowed to come to this differently. When you get 20 people to watch this movie, no one saw that. No two people saw the same film.
No.
So when I watch this movie, I agree her performance is not Winona Ryder's other performances. And the actress in the backseat, Gina Rowlands, is what I would call a more conventional performance. Sure. But I think what Winona Ryder is doing here is, I think it's being directed. I don't think this is her choice necessarily. I think that her performance is of the 1990s ilk, because there are other movies where you get, I'm thinking Clerks, where you get that staccato fast dialogue.
That really weird, because it felt a lot like not Dante, but the other one,
Randall.
It felt Randall-esque.
Very Randall-esque. Yeah. And I think what it is there's a certain type of screenwriting where the performance demands not naturalism, but showing off the dialogue. Kevin Smith's Clerks is a perfect example. Dante and Randall, the way they talk to each other is not
natural
at all. But it's perfect for the way it's written.
It's showing off the words.
It showcases the script. It's not a performance so much as like a script showcase. It's a vehicle for this.
Isn't that weird? I never thought about it that way, but because I love Clerks, but I also can't stand the performances. But I always enjoy the movie, which is
it's a different way to come at it. Mm-hmm. Like, I think there's a rock song and then there's a noise rock song, right?
Yes.
Where you listen to a rock song and it's all about like the notes and the guitar and the lyrics.
The riff is really tight.
Yeah, but when you listen to the noise rock song, that the sounds they're making is serving an ulterior motive.
Right.
And I think in that way, Winona Ryder is her performance in particular is meant to showcase Jarmusch's writing rather than establish a natural performance. It's just another way to look at art. It's like an abstract performance almost. That's like the abstract art of acting.
I'm not quite
break your brain.
No. I'm not quite 100% sure how I feel about that. But I don't disagree. That's such a unique and interesting way of looking at. Part of my brain's like, you're just making an excuse for a bad acting choice, but also it's like, no, you might have something there because you do see it a lot, especially in this era of filmmaking.
You know who else does it? Like, I'm not going to say guilty of it, because I think this director does it better and less showily. Or less obviously than Kevin Smith, and I think sometimes Jim Jarmusch. Like, if you've seen Jim Jarmusch's first two movies, especially Down by a Law, that's the most naturalistic performance Tom Waits ever gives. But it's still a Tom Waits performance, but it's perfect because it's showcasing Jim Jarmusch's writing. Quentin Tarantino, not all of his movies, but think about Reservoir Dogs. Think about the overlapping dialogue, the giant performances from Michael Madsen and
Harvey
Keitel. I think it all works because it's across the board. Everyone's doing it.
Everyone's at 11.
Right. So you get into the world, but I think in a lot of ways, Tarantino knows that he's one hell of a screenwriter, and the actors aren't kind of serving to... The actors are serving his words to us. Right. But anyway, that's my take on Winona Ryder's performance. I actually really like the Los Angeles section.
I think it's just it's a goofy piece.
Okay.
It starts you off like, if you didn't know that this was going to be an anthology piece, you'd be really confused of what's happening. But I think that if you're watching this movie, you sort of understand that it's going to be segmented, and he gives you enough of a hint at the beginning.
Once you get to New York, nothing surprises you anymore.
Exactly. But that was my first sort of thought that there's going to be nothing. Well, essentially, the movie casting director offers her a job, and she's like, I think you'd be great for this thing. How about you come and meet some studio people of mine? I think you'd be great. And she's like, no, I've got a really pretty great thing going on right now. I don't really want to ruin that. And she's like, everyone wants to be in Hollywood. And Winona Ryder's like, well, no.
Well, yeah, and the casting director says, she's like, you could be a movie star.
Yeah. And everyone wants to be a movie star.
And Winona Ryder's like, she says, like, so what are you're a cab driver. What are your dreams?
She wants to be a mechanic.
And she's like, I don't want to be a cab driver forever. And she's like, well, what do you want to be? And she goes, I want to be a mechanic. Yeah. And I love, there's a lot going on here. Like, we should. This is what our podcast is about. Why do
I don't know.
I keep being like,
that's why we're here, Max.
Let's gloss over this. But no, like, honestly, when they talk about like what she wants in her life, the casting director lady, what do we primarily see her doing? She's on her cell phone, she's stressed.
She's stressed out. She's not paying attention to anything outside of her own world.
And her boyfriend, like, did so and so call? No, didn't call. Yeah. So she doesn't have.
The moment she flips, actually, is when she sees the stretch limo pass the cab. And she looks around her environment inside the cab and realizes she's okay with that.
Yeah.
And then she starts to engage Corky. And I found that very interesting. It kind of told the story that she probably came from nothing and worked her way up in the Hollywood system.
And isn't satisfied
with what,
I read that slightly differently. Because what I read, I think at that point we've already heard, I think I wrote it down, but at that point we've already heard Corky say, I don't want to be a cab driver forever. Right. And normally we'd get like, I want to be a movie star.
Right.
Because, we have a casting director in the back seat. That would be the obvious place to go. But no, we get, all of a sudden, she's like, I want to be a mechanic. And like, well, what about family? Do you want to have a family? Oh, yeah. Family. Lots of kids.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah, like lots of boys. Well, what about girls? Girls are nice. Yeah, girls too, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Like, her priority is... Like, she seems to have her life pretty figured out.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm a cab driver now. That's what I want to do.
I want to be a mechanic.
I'm
working towards that.
And when she talks about the, like, what kind of husband would you want? And you get the sense that the woman in the back is, like, thinking, like, high-powered somebody or, like, someone to make money. Because if you're going to be a mechanic but we find out Corky's like, I don't really care what he does as long as he, like, loves me right.
Yep.
And then... hats off to Gina Rollins, because I think that like point counterpoint different acting styles works genius because Corky comes off as like almost like simple in how not Corky, but Winona Ryder's performance comes off almost as though Corky is simple, like very surface because she's got the answers. Like What do you want to be? I want to be a mechanic. Yeah, it's not like, well, I want to be.
One day maybe if I
a mechanic.
She's
it's just right off the tip as she's like firing up her 20th cigarette. You know what I mean? So what I'm thinking is that limo is she looks out the window and she sees where she wants to be in that limo. She doesn't want to be in this cab. She wants to be the jet set Hollywood lifestyle, But what do we see? We don't actually see. She is of the Hollywood world that she's offering Corky at the end of that short. But what is that meant for her? That's meant, oh shit, I missed my luggage. Oh, now I'm catching a ride in this dingy cab. Right. Oh, this driver is like giving me her phone book that she's been sitting on. Her Hollywood world, I think she's seeing it deconstructed by this cab ride because that limo goes. That's where she wants to be, and it keeps on going. Yeah, it passes her by. And in a weird way, we get the sense that she's older, that she wanted a family, that she wanted a husband, and her boyfriend's blowing her off. She doesn't seem to have any kids, and she has
the Hollywood thing, but not the life she wants.
And I love that every line is important because when she reveals that she had night blindness, and Winona Ryder goes, "Oh God, is that something that happens when you get old?" Her face in the back, she has a flash of a realization where she's like, "Oh my God, I'm old." And then she goes, no, and she just shrugs it off. But that ties in later when that family and that kids and the husband, that all sails by her in that white limo, essentially. You know what I mean? Like all this has passed her. And over and over again, all this, like you said, it's just all surface conversation, and that's the
beauty of it.
We talked about before we started recording. We try to never talk about.
I know it's rough,
but you can't not do it. So anyway, we were talking about how even though it seems like a lot of the dialogue is off the cuff or like spontaneous or improv, it's not.
It's all word for word.
Word for word, they're delivering Jarmusch's lines. He is a super tightly controlled screenwriter. So what I love is that all these conversations are surface shit. Like, so what do you want to do when you grow up? Well, this is what I want to do when I grow up. And then some kids and blah, blah, blah. And they're just skating over the top of everything. But everything they're saying
means something.
It's all like, because it's not just a conversation about what Corky...
Sorry, I'm like whispering, but it's like
no.
Thinking about it. It's It's like, yeah, shit.
It's not just what Corky... Yeah, it's not just like what Corky wants. It's what Victoria didn't get.
Right.
In a weird way. That's what they're really talking about. But it's never said.
It's never said.
In any of the segments. They never intentionally address, except in Helsinki. In Helsinki, which is, it rips your fucking heart out. But yeah, everything is it's like he's writing every line that's delivered is secretly two lines. It's so
the thing they're saying and the thing that they're not saying.
Yeah, like watching it twice, I think is a great idea. Like, if you have a Jim Jarmusch movie and you spawn it and you didn't like it, watch it again, because I bet you like it the second time. And if you watch it a year from now, a third time, you're gonna be like, oh fuck, this movie's
brilliant.
I didn't, or like this movie's not about what I thought it was about at all. It'll totally shift on you.
Well, you change in that year too.
Yeah, for sure.
I think movies like this, you bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, it's very. I don't think of him as a Jim Jarmusch. I don't think of him as a filmmaker. I think of him as an artist, in that the longer you look at his stuff, the more you see. Yeah. It's like looking at a painting. You pick new stuff out, and it changes the whole meaning. It's amazing. I wanted to talk about the cab, because these cabs, they say
her cab is like,
there's no back window on the cab.
Nope.
And I wrote down the cab reflects the cab driver. In a weird way, every cab we see reflects the person driving it. In Helsinki, we're going to see like the drabbest, most nondescript, like cold, dead cab you'll ever see. And that's perfect for that driver. Corky's. The first two cars do have mechanical issues, and I was jotting down what I thought they might be in the margins. I'm like, no, I thought that sound was this, but I think this sound is that. So I'm going to diagnose. I think Corky's car has... I think that the belts are too tight, and that's why they're squealing. And I know for a fact when she backs out that sound is a power steering pump that's going. So I think she's got... I'm going to diagnose her right now. I think squealing belts and bad power steering pump. I
think that's a fair assessment.
That's my diagnosis of Corky's car. But we actually see this in a Michael Mann film from like 2005. I think it's like 2004, 2005. Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. And the reason that Tom Cruise stays in Jamie Foxx's cab and hires him for the night is he has the
well-run cab.
He has the
clean.
he says that the actual line is, "This is the cleanest cab I've ever seen." And we see Jamie Foxx when he first encounters the cab. He shares a cab with the day shift guy.
He's cleaning it meticulously.
He pulls all the food out and throws it in the trash. He sprays the window. He puts his little like picture of paradise up in the visor so that he can look at it. Everything is clean and spotless and ordered. And that's because that is how Jamie Foxx is. So Michael Mann uses the cab to show us his character, just like Jim Jarmusch is using.
Yes.
And yeah, so I thought that was really, really interesting. I don't want to miss any of my notes because there's so much to do here. Oh, there's a shot. This movie is amazingly shot. And until I read this booklet, this is a Criterion DVD, and they're so fucking awesome, dude. You get so much out of the Criterion
They're
shit.
worth the extra few bucks on the Criterion.
They really are.
And we were not sponsored by Criterion, but
we should be. No, but yeah, like the Criterion DVDs, I think the normal, like finding this on DVD, it'd be like $10, and the Criterion's going to be like 20.
Yeah.
Fucking worth it.
Absolutely.
And not only is it worth it because of the bonus material, but like my copy of Eraserhead,
the transfers are ridiculous.
The transfers are insane. Even the DVD transfer is incredible. And they mix from original film. They mix the soundtrack from the tapes. So the audio is mixed from the original magnetic tape recordings. It's so good. But anyway,
the supplemental material is quite good on this one.
I didn't realize it until I read that booklet that Jarmusch, when he shot this, intentionally, in film, when two characters are having a conversation, you have something called, they refer to it in the extra matter as, or in the bonus materials as reverse field.
Like the over
it's all
shot.
Yeah, it's the over the shoulder. Yeah. Basically, it's a two shot is when you have both people in the frame, and that's what Jarmusch uses almost exclusively in this film. I don't think we even see we see a couple field reverse field where we see a POV shot and then the reverse POV. You see it in cop dramas all the time. Two people talking across a table and one camera is over one person's right shoulder and the other camera is over the other person's left shoulder. Right, and they just cut back and forth between those two angles, but Jarmusch didn't like that. He is like, that's a crutch. So he put every bit of action in the cab. That way, his actors can't even look each other in the face as they're talking to each other.
No, they can't, can they?
No, they never look at each other.
Driver and passenger can't look at... You can in the rear
view. In the rear view,
the mirror,
but what they're actually doing in the rear view is looking into the camera. So it's the people in the back seat looking straight at the viewer.
Like right at the viewer.
But his actors never look at each other. I mean, in Italy, the guy turns around and looks at the Padre a couple times, but that's to illustrate that he's a shitty and unsafe driver.
Yes.
And then he starts panicking once that guy dies. Spoilers. Yeah. But yeah, so he was like, his part of the conceit of the film was, can I shoot a film where my actors never look at each other but deliver the most important, like they're in a weird way, these are like 5 tales of morality. They're all like moral tales.
Well, yeah.
Or amorality, as it were.
Amorality.
Pumpkins. Pumpkins, lambs, and my brother's wife. But so yeah, his actors never look at each other. The only time that I can think of that we get a reverse shot is when we're in New York and Yo-Yo gets out of the car to get his sister.
With Rosie Perez.
Because we're looking at Rosie, I don't know the other actor's name. Do you?
Oh,
anyway, we're looking at
no,
so Helmet is looking at them, but we're seeing basically his POV. Then we see Helmet looking, and we get his reaction shot. That's one of the
Armin Mueller-Stahl.
Yeah, so that's like one of the 2 times we get that. For the most part, we're just seeing that 2 shot through the windshield. Sometimes we'll get close-ups of the driver. Sometimes we'll get close-ups in the back seat. But when they're talking, it's that 2 shot through the windshield. What you looking at? What'd you lose?
Nothing.
What'd you find?
We're good.
So
I
yeah,
want to make sure I didn't miss a note.
The cinematography in this is amazing because what I wanted to talk about is one shot in LA. as we're driving, since they can't look at each other, they look out the window, and Jarmusch shows us what they're seeing. So the actors can't look at each other, so we see the POV of the driver. We'll look through the windshield sometimes as like they swerve to miss traffic or as they merge lanes or whatever. And then the passengers in the back seat can't look the driver in the face, so they'll talk and look out the window, and then Jarmusch shows us what they're looking at, and that's a chance for him to show us more things that he thinks are beautiful that often relate to what they're talking about. But I think it's really telling that one of the things that Victoria looks out the window and Jarmusch shows us her looking at is a used car lot. And it is, I feel so stupid saying it, but I'm going to say it, and I'm going to say it with passion.
I think
it's the most beautiful used car lot you've ever seen in your life. There are, it's not like tinsel, but you know what I'm saying? Those like
little
really
streamery kind of thing.
Yeah, there's like silver streamers hanging, and it's in the absolute dusk. It's like the moment before it goes full black, so it's like almost full dark
bluish.
Yeah. And the lights, those brilliant white lights shining in those silver hanging like tinsel drapes to draw your eye to the used car lot. That, and then the price tags on all these unwanted old vehicles as she's talking about like, you know, like her, basically like her dreams that have failed and her life that's passed her by.
Damn it.
It's insanely poignant. And that shot, just that shot alone, like if I could get a high quality still of that, I would put I'd put a used car lot up on my wall. It's gorgeous. The way, and we didn't mention it yet, but the cinematographer, the director of photography for this film is the same DP from Eraserhead.
Yeah, that blew your mind. I had to stop looking at my phone when you were texting me.
It's Frederick Elms, and yeah, spoilers, he's the fucking DP for next week's film too. Blue Velvet, yes.
Shut the fuck
100%. Did you not read that text where I was like, Frederick?
I didn't catch the Blue Velvet part.
We have the same cinematographer for the first 3 films of this month. I went and looked at Only Lovers Left Alive, and I'm like, if it's Frederick Elms, I think I'll have to kill myself.
I'll have to drown myself in the tub.
It's not. Thank God. Though. It's a different person. But yeah, the eye behind this camera, and I think it's a combination of the two. We've seen his work in Eraserhead, and he's a goddamn genius. But I think that particular poetic sense of beautiful decay, I think it's a beautiful synthesis between synergy between the two. And god damn it, I had to touch on that used car lot. It's just beautiful. Yeah, there's also funny dialogue in this too. It's not a comedy by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but it's humorous.
My favorite line that I wrote down the line. The director that she's working for is looking for basically an actress who's never been in anything, who's about 18 years old, who has the balls of a paratrooper. She says, so she starts to realize that Corky might fit the bill.
Never acted. Balls of her.
Yeah, so she gets a call and they're like, did you find an actress? And she looks at Corky and she's like, I'm having an idea. I might be having a moment of genius. But she can't give too much away, so she stays really level. And then she goes, you can tell the guy on the other line is like freaking out.
You're like, what? Who is it? What?
She sounds so calm and she says, I'm sorry I sound calm. I assure you I'm hysterical. And she delivers it like totally flat so as not to alert Corky.
I assure you.
Oh my God. And it's just genius. We're not talking about Patterson. It's another film by Jim Jarmusch. It's his newest one. Adam Driver. It's really good. I highly recommend it. But he revisits the particular theme of Los Angeles. He revisits that theme again with a feature-length film with Patterson.
Oh, wow.
Which, for me, I think the theme is the simplicity and simple pleasure of like a simple life. Because Patterson's a bus driver, the Adam Driver's character.
Oh, right, he's a poet or something.
He's a bus driver,
yeah.
And he writes poetry like in between when like on fairs and when his bus is being serviced and stuff, and like in his free time, he just like writes poems. Right. And they're like, "Do you want to be like a famous, amazing poet?" And he's like, "No, I'm a bus driver." And I think that I liked the 1991, 2017 like that he's still
growth. But still there, still.
I think he's always been fascinated in a weird way. We see in this, even in just to keep it in this movie, we see that fascination that like people who are both some of the people we see are resigned to their lot in life. Other people, like the blind woman in the Paris section, realize they are in a situation, but no situation is inherently good or bad. It is what you...
It's what you're in.
Yeah.
And then you make...
It's where you are and it's what you make of it.
Yeah.
And like we find out that this like sighted cab driver is worse off, even though he's like throwing all this pity and like, oh my God, it must be so fucked up to be blind and stuff. My French cab driver is my boss.
Yeah.
when I do the voice.
Sounds just like it.
But yeah, the blind Parisian woman is way better off than he is.
Yeah.
Like she's living what is
she wants
a
how
weirdly
she wants to live her life.
attractive life. Like when you hear her talk, you're like, God, I want to feel even half of that shit. So it's I love how he turns it on its head. But I'm done with LA.
Yeah.
Are you done?
Yeah,
All right.
because of my least favorite of them. So.
Yes.
Now the New York is my favorite.
New York, I think, is also my favorite.
I think it probably would be most people's favorite. What's funny is I think this is one that he wrote more from from actual experience. Like this happened to Jim Jarmusch when he was in New York, where he was like in the 2-3 o'clock in the morning trying to get a cab, couldn't get a cab. He found a cab and the dude couldn't drive and said, "Listen, I'll still pay you the fare. Let me fucking drive this cab so we don't die." And Jim Jarmusch ended up driving the cab. So this actually happened to him.
Yeah.
Which is brilliant.
It is.
But there's so much. It's just a lovely piece of cinema. Everything from Yo-Yo to even like I'm not a fan of Rosie Perez, but I loved her in this.
I did too. Someone points out in an essay specifically on this piece that Jarmusch is able, as a director, he has a weird knack for getting singular performances out of people that no other director can seem to replicate.
Right.
Like
or he might actually letting them act
Maybe.
instead of like, hey, can you be Rosie Perez in this movie? Because we need you to be Rosie Perez. Like, White Man Can't Jump. Can you be that in this movie?
Yeah. Like, there's a famous story about Kevin Smith asking Bruce Willis to...
Oh, when he's doing Cop Out?
When he was doing Cop Out.
He gave him a reading for Moonlighting?
Yeah.
Like, can he do it like...
Can you do it like the Moonlighting reading? And Bruce Willis was like, what are you fucking talking about? Right. Don't tell me to do that. Do you realize how dickish that is of you? But yeah, but in a weird way, I was thinking about it. And like Johnny Depp, lots of brilliant performances, but you never see a performance that is Dead Man ever again.
No.
Never before and nothing like that after. You see Tom Waits and other shit, but he's always being Tom Waits.
Being Tom Waits, yeah.
In Down by Law, he's perfect. He's exactly the person that you see, like, okay, the character that he's meant to be playing, at no point are you like, oh, look, it's Tom Waits doing a Tom Waits type thing. He's just so beaten down. And I think in a weird way, that's what we get from Rosie Perez here. Her performance is so shrill and shrieking that you want to just like mute the TV.
But I like Angela.
I turned off my big speakers. Just for a second, I got up and I was like, click. Yeah. As soon as she's done, I'll turn those back on.
But it wasn't like I enjoyed her performance.
I love her too. Yeah. She's great in this. So we have three characters primarily in this. The original driver is Helmut. That's Armin Mueller-Stahl. We have Yo-Yo. This is the guy who's trying to catch the cab at the beginning. That's Giancarlo Esposito.
And he's from anyone that's a fan of the show Breaking Bad. This is Gus. Holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
That blew my mind.
It's a super young Gus.
That's fucking Gus. You blew my mind for a second.
What always gets me is when I see people from The Walking Dead in movies from the 90s. And I'm like, oh my God, it's fucking Walking Dead guy. And then Angela's Rosie Perez. But I think that there's something about at the beginning, the Giancarlo Esposito, when he's trying to catch that cab.
And all the cabs are passing him.
There's there's no traffic in New York except cabs,
for cabs,
and they're just blowing past him. I love when that group of people steps off the sidewalk to cross the street, and he's like, "Don't you be taking my cab?" Right. Yeah, that's right. You keep moving. Because he's basically it's a bunch of like white people, and they can get a cab, and he can't. And at no point, there's actually two segments in here that touch on racism,
but it's never.
Said. It's said in the Paris one. They mention it overtly.
Well, they do.
At the very end, he calls a guy a racist, but it's fairly obvious that the
two black men being racist on another black man because he's from the Ivory Coast and not from
The Paris one takes racism head on. This one is really like circumvents it in a weird way, or like looks at it from the
shows
side.
It to you,
oh
though.
Yeah, because the first thing we see is the black man can't get a cab in New York.
And the only person that picks him up is an immigrant
from Germany,
who can't really drive very well or speak
hardly
very well.
speak English.
Yeah.
Right. So I have something I want to say about Helmut as it relates to racism, which I think is really interesting. But we get Yo-Yo. His name's Yo-Yo. The Esposito's character is named Yo-Yo. So he pulls a bunch of money out, and finally a cab pulls over because they see money, and they're like, "All right." Rolls down the window and he goes, "Brooklyn," and he drives away because at this time we have to remember this is 1991.
This is 91. Brooklyn is not.
No, Brooklyn is gentrified now,
right.
But Brooklyn was a bad neighborhood in 1991, and before that, it was like notoriously rough. It was a rough room. Now everyone I know who lives in New York lives in Brooklyn.
Yeah. It's kind of like
Times Square.
Times Square, yeah.
Where they cleaned Times Square up and got all the porn shops out of there, and all the strip clubs are gone, and now it's just
it's like how Disney took over Las Vegas. It's like the same sort of thing.
And in a weird way, we talked about this ages ago.
The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. There's no Wild West anymore.
You kind of miss it, right?
I mean, I don't. Kind of, yeah.
People talk about
it's sterile.
It is in a weird way. People talk about what Times Square used to be like. Dangerous, yeah, but like you could go there and it would be like vibrant and alive, and you'd feel kind of like on edge. And you'd go,
which Starbucks do I go to?
Yeah, you walk into Times Square now, and it's like 50 people. 2 people are protesting something. 2 people on the other side of the street are protesting against the people who are protesting, and then there's like a bunch of tourists taking pictures of nothing, and that's what Times Square is now.
Right.
But when this movie happened, Brooklyn was a neighborhood where cab drivers were like, fuck that.
Right.
No. I'm not taking you there. Goodbye.
Right.
Not just because you're black, but because it's Brooklyn.
It was more like a melting pot then instead of like sterile and...
Yeah. Weirdly segmented.
Oh, that's weird.
It's what's really strange is I don't live in New York, but I would say based on the films that I've seen that take place in New York, more homogenous. I mean, there's always been Harlem, and there's Brooklyn in this movie seems to be particularly like an all African American neighborhood. But I would say, like, based on what I've heard from Kevin Smith, from Jim Jarmusch interviews, more homogenous back then. And now it's like over time, the city has been like sifting people into their proper neighborhoods. It's it feels kind of weird and gross, right?
Yeah, a lot weird and gross, but
tons weird and gross. So I didn't do the color. New York, when we go to the New York clock.
The clock,
on the wall. So New York is like this sea green.
I was gonna say, I remember that was
greenish
like green.
color. Yeah, what I loved about this was watching it, and I was like, oh, so I'm seeing the exact right color because I'm telling you, people, take 20 minutes and calibrate your TVs. It'll change your fucking life.
Oh my God, I still need to do that.
I'll give you the DVD. I have a Blu-ray that'll calibrate your TV.
Thank you.
So here's my theory about Helmut and racism. Because basically we open with Jim Jarmusch saying, look, this black man can't get a cab in New York.
And when he can with money, they're not going to take him to where he wants to go.
Right. So here comes an immigrant who can't drive, barely speaks English, has no family. He picks him up. And what we're going to see again and again with Helmut, I think, is Jim Jarmusch commenting on in a weird way, racism and innocence. Because Helmut looks, when he's trying to drive, he's so focused that he's not looking at anything but the road. But when Yo-Yo starts driving, he starts looking out the window.
He looks out the window. Yeah.
And he goes, oh, beautiful.
Oh, New York.
How long has he been in New York?
He hasn't actually looked
He hasn't looked at it. And we start seeing New York through, like, what I'm gonna say it through child's eyes.
Yeah.
I don't mean that in a demeaning
he's
way.
Very childlike too, though.
He was
a circus clown,
which is such a great wacky. There's a lot of shit like that, like wacky details in Coffee and Cigarettes. There's a scene with the Jizza and the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan.
Yes.
And their waiter keeps coming over to the table, and finally they pan up and we realize the waiter is Bill Murray. And it's Bill Murray playing Bill Murray.
Right.
So like there's always like weird shit like that.
Yeah.
And
I love that he was a clown, though.
yeah, I did too. And that is key to what I think is probably the single. I'm not going to say this is the best movie we've watched so far. It's high up there for me. Obviously, it resonates with me really powerfully. But I think the single finest moment of filmmaking that we've seen is in this movie, in this segment, and it has to do with Helmut being a clown. Do you want to skip ahead to that?
Yeah.
And just touch it? Okay.
Yeah.
At the end, we get this. I caught myself smiling so often watching this because you hear Yo-Yo and Angela, and they're like bicker. But and Helmut, but it could be really like abrasive. But because Helmut is so delighted by them, you're like, oh, this is just fun.
Yes.
And Yo-Yo drives them to Brooklyn without incident. They pull up to the house. Angela gets out. She's being sassy. He teaches Helmut to drive a little bit, and then he pays Helmut, and Helmut kisses the money and puts it away, and he goes, you got to count it. And he takes it out, and he goes, the meter says 13, but I only paid you 12. This is New York, man. You got to count that. And he goes, okay.
Yeah, I counted.
And then he gets out, and they've formed a weird family.
Yep.
They've become this like cohesive, fun, happy unit in a weird way. They've bonded. That's exactly. They've bonded to
in that short trip. They bound. I mean, yeah.
And you bond with them. You're like, this is amazing. And then he gets out of the car and he goes, all right, do you know how to get back to Manhattan? And Helmut goes, no. Yeah. So then, we get Yo-Yo being like, you take a turn, you
get it right, and then it's two rights.
No, it's everything we did. You do the opposite, and then okay, so go to that light, take a right, and you know that big road. You're gonna stop and ask someone for directions there. And he goes, okay, and then because Yo-Yo's getting a little consternated, Helmut takes out a red clown's nose and puts it on his nose. Right?
Yes.
So.
Oh my God! I
have a big note on it, and I'm just going to read my note because
please do.
It's the best I can do, and I'll elaborate on it. But he drives down the road, and in a Charlie Chaplin car comedy, he gets to the light and turns left.
Goes the wrong way.
Yeah, and Yo-Yo's like, right, Helmut. Ah, man, and he laughs and he goes inside, right? And Helmut's like singing to himself, and he's looking around.
Shit's getting really bad.
Well, and he's looking around, and it's so gradual and so subtle. And hats off to Armin Mueller-Stahl, the actor. He hears a car alarm, and he goes, "Okay, 2 lefts. Must learn some English." He's got a clown nose on still, and we're still, as an audience, riding high on that wave of like camaraderie and fun.
And you're still smiling,
And then we see a car accident, and there's police. And there's sirens, and there's a fire, and we see fire trucks, and then we see shattered windows, and we see people roaming the streets.
Turning again.
We're in a we see Brooklyn now. Mm-hmm. Previously, we've just seen the car, we've seen them having fun. Now we're seeing where they
in the middle of the shit.
We see literally like it's like a roving street gang at like 4 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, and there's like shattered windows, and we see people like shouting at each other, and you see Helmut's face change. I wrote down, once Helmut leaves his fares, he makes a wrong turn. Funny, he's a clown. Clown nose. What a fun, silly man. But now the silly man is lost.
Yes.
And as his confusion grows, the smile falls from your face. My face. You stop smiling.
As the viewer.
As the viewer, you were like,
shit, he's lost.
Yeah, you realize like, oh wait, this isn't funny anymore.
And he can't really speak that great of English.
He doesn't speak English well.
He doesn't really know how to drive that well.
He doesn't. Yeah, he's a terrible driver, and he's making wrong turns, and he made another one. You watch him make another one, and then you're looking out the window, and you see police, and you see roving street gangs, and you see him start to get scared, and you're not having fun anymore.
Nope. And then his segment ends. My last note is Helmut is still probably lost in Brooklyn.
Right now. I wrote down, this is not a city to be confused in. This is dangerous. He's lost in the big city, and he hasn't got his friends any longer. We see police, fire department, broken windows, people in the street. And when he takes his nose off, I, as a viewer, me, am devastated.
Yeah.
Because what we've seen, when he picks Yo-Yo up, Yo-Yo has his New Yorker face on.
Yes.
And Helmut has his I'm a scared immigrant New Yorker face on. Simple English. Hello, welcome, sir.
Right.
Come and get in. He's got his lines. And everyone's got their guard up. And we've watched over, I think it's 24 minutes, the whole segment. Over like 20 minutes, we watched them all relax and show
and have these great moments. He's playing the flutes or
they show their real selves to each other. You see the New Yorker fall away, and they just become people in a car. And at the end, when Helmut starts to get scared and he gets lost in the city, and what I wrote down is he takes his real face off and puts his New Yorker face back on. Can't be a clown. Oh my God. He puts that hardened mask on again in the face of his fear. And the most perfect line ever, the last line of this segment, when he takes off his nose and he puts it out of sight, and he grabs the wheel with two hands, which earlier, this is a callback to earlier when he sees Yo-Yo driving with his hand just draped on the wheel. Oh, yep. We see him. He's driving really casually, and then we see when he takes that nose off, he knuckles down on that steering wheel, and his eyes are moving around, and that's when we see the car accident with the police, and we see shattered glass all over, and we see that he's in a shit neighborhood, and we hear people yelling, we hear dogs barking, and we hear sirens, and under it we hear Helmut say, "New York, New York."
Oh.
And it blows because, oh my God, it blows your mind and breaks your heart because what draws people to the Big Apple? The first thing you think of is New York, New York.
Yeah, exactly.
It's this glimmering city of hope, and we start in Manhattan, so that's what we see.
So that's what you see.
You see that Sinatra, New York.
Yep.
You see that, like,
it's
come
like
on
a Broadway
down.
play just got out, and
in your head, it's like you hear a little man who's like, "This is where your dreams come true. Have a drink or two," and then the famous line, "New York, New York," and here we have this terrified
New York,
this terrified immigrant who's, the way that I read it is, it's like a little prayer. It's like he's saying that song to himself, and he just says,
let it be okay.
He says, like, New York, hard stop, New York. Oh my God. So I wanted to just talk about that because I think that for me, that moment when he turns left and the change in tone and tension that
immediate,
that the film manages to, it's immediate, but it's so
slow.
Subtle.
Yeah.
It's so subtle. It's not like he takes a left and some gangbanger busts a window out. No,
right,
nothing is actually happening to him. He's just lost. And being lost is
the joy of that moment is slowly
draining out of
away.
Yeah, it drains out of the scene. And you're left with just a scared old man who has no family and has a clown nose on until he is worried that the clown nose will make him a target, and he crushes that. He crushes that little bit of joy. I know, dude. It's devastating.
I still love it.
Yeah, I think that minute and a half of film, that minute and a half is the best thing that we've seen. If you put everything we've watched,
from getting the payment to it's New York,
you and I in this season.
No, I know. I'm just actual minute
from
and a half.
For me, it's from the moment he puts the nose on. Or I would say maybe the moment Yo-Yo gets out of the car.
Okay.
Yo-Yo gets out of the car and he's like, "So you know how to get back to Brooklyn?" And there's that funny, because
they have that funny little exchange.
I would call that like the tag of the buoyant mood.
Right.
So that's like the tail end of that buoyant mood where it's like, "Oh, you crazy Helmut, you took a left." And Yo-Yo's not worried for him.
No, he's not.
He's like, you crazy. And he goes inside. And from the moment we cut away from Yo-Yo and jump back into Helmut's car, it is a steady decline in mood and a constant ratcheting up of tension.
You're fearing for his safety and his life, essentially.
Yeah, it's this weird, subtle. It's not even like a shift in mood. It's like a tide.
Yep.
It's like the...
You know he's probably going to be okay. He probably is going to find... He's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be a really long night for him, but he's going to be okay. But that joy is gone.
And that's what this movie does. It doesn't give you the big Jason Statham shootout. There's no... there is a car crash, but it's really minor, fender bender. This is not like an action movie. This is not a black and white, like, my life was changed forever when my arm was shot off in a gun battle.
This is the moment that became...
It's about the powerful ramifications of small, innocuous moments in everyday life. It's insane. It's the poetry of the everyday. It's that is incredible. Watching a man find joy in a cab ride and then have the city that he's chosen to move to
take that all away.
Yeah, and it's not like his life is probably fairly the same.
Yeah.
There's not going to be any like, this is the end of Helmut. He's going to drive.
Right, he's going to get mugged. No, he probably found his way back. Yeah,
he'll get home. He's got his $13 in his pocket. He'll go to his apartment. He'll wake up tomorrow. But the fact that we saw that moment happen, that moment mattered to him as a character and definitely to us as viewers.
Definitely to us.
That's just incredible. That's just incredible filmmaking. That section, when you watch that, it just makes me...
I agree.
It makes you want to applaud. It's incredible. We didn't actually... Because we skipped the entire episode to get... Or that segment to get to the end. Do you have anything on the middle?
I think it's just a perfect piece of writing, of acting, of everything about it feels good. It's just... Because you do get to see these eventually three people... Even though Rosie or Angela and Yo-Yo are yelling, but there's a bit of love there too.
Yeah, you feel like that's how they express themselves.
And Angela softens towards Helmut, and there's this great banter between all three of them, and that relationship that only lasts for 20 minutes. It goes from stranger to family, like you said, in 20 minutes.
It's bizarre.
But it doesn't feel like forced. It's like you're there with them the entire time.
Yeah. There's no
you don't cut away. You don't cut away from the cab, and then like 5 minutes later, it's like you are there with them the entire time.
See every second
see the
of
genesis
the drive.
of this whole thing.
There's no trickery. There's no like. And now they're friends because I need them to be friends for the sake of the plot.
It's just that slow. 20 minutes is a long time. It's brief when you consider the grand, a 2-hour movie. 20 minutes is
not
a
that
very
much.
small wedge. But a lot happens in that 20 minutes.
What I was
and Helmut is just they're all fans. The Helmut as that was it East German, Czechoslovakian. I mean, he's close to
he's like right on the border.
Right on the border. Just that genuine warmth. I think a lot of that comes from the fact he was a circus clown, and so like part of his job and his drive is to make people laugh.
Yeah,
and that's his chosen profession in a place that is a hard, cold place to live.
Right. And what I was thinking about the racism thing and the childish eyes, air quotes, of Helmut, is he doesn't care that this guy's black because the way that he exists as a character in this segment of this film is he functions as like an innocent.
Yes.
He feels completely innocent, whereas you get the sense, not necessarily that Yo-Yo is like a bad guy or a murderer, but he's a New Yorker. Right. He's hardened. He's probably done some stuff. He's probably been a dick here and there.
Yeah.
You get the sense that Helmut has been like he's like
a genuinely nice person his entire life.
Or but for me, it's almost like he isn't an old man. The way that his character behaves, he's clean. He's clean and innocent. He doesn't.
There's a purity to him.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So that's why seeing him scared hurts me so much at the end. It's because you're watching like a loss of innocence, or like it'd be like watching a
and it makes it sting even more because he is an old man.
Yeah. Oh, it's awful, but it's great, but it's awful. But I was thinking about this. If you were to try and describe the plot of either of the two movies we watched this this month so far. Could you? Here's the plot of this film. Taxi drivers pick people up and bring them to places. There's no story.
There's no story.
Here.
No.
That's why I love this movie so much. This movie's 2 hours 8 minutes long, and at no point are you like, is anything ever going to happen? Nothing ever does.
But I never felt that way.
Not at all. It's like vignette snapshots of people.
I love anthology pieces anyways. In writing, in books, like I think some of Stephen King's best stuff is in his
different seasons.
I mean, fuck, come on.
It's got 2 of his most famous non-horror shorts in it. It's got Rhea Hayworth in The Shawshank Redemption and The Body, which became Stand By Me. Both of those are in the same anthology book.
I think at some point I was like, oh, this is like Cat's Eye, the cab driver version. Like,
I got nothing else for New York.
Nope,
but this is I agree. I agree. The way that this is structured, I don't think you could sustain a 2-hour single cab drive. Although
Collateral does it, kind of.
Collateral takes you out of the car and gives you lots of like gunfire and
that's
action.
true. Yeah.
I'm wrong though. Locke is like an hour 40 minutes, and there's not even a second person in the car. That's Tom Hardy.
Is that the Tom Hardy movie?
Yeah, Tom Hardy. Here's the plot. Tom Hardy gets in a car and drives from like London from some like Croydon or something to London. I'm not an English person.
Wow.
But it's like a 2-hour car drive. And he gets in the car, and the director shows us the car ride in real time and never cuts away. We don't lose any time. We don't lose a minute. He gets in the car and drives to London, and we stay with him the whole time. There's no one else in the car. That's the whole fucking movie. It is spellbinding.
Oh, wow.
Edge of your seat. First time I watched it, I had sweat under my arms.
Are you serious?
Done. Yeah, dude, it's fucking intense. And it's not like...
Sounds like some Andy Warhol bullshit.
There's no car crash. There's no high-speed chases. There's no swerving. He's a totally competent driver. It's just him driving and monologuing. What it is he has a cell phone in his dashboard.
Okay.
So he takes phone calls. But they're all like fairly innocuous phone calls. I cannot. It's impossible to explain Locke to people who haven't.
Does he signal before changing lanes? Is he?
Yeah. Oh my god.
10 o'clock and 2 o'clock the whole
10
time.
10 and 2 the whole time. He's like tick 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 tick, and he'll merge over and he passes. But there's literally no like. And then some government agents. It's none of that. You're watching someone drive.
And then he arrives at his destination and puts it in park.
Yeah, I mean, spoilers, we fade out a little bit as he like takes the off ramp to get to the place where he's going. But that's the whole movie, and I'm telling you right now, it's one of my top 3 Tom Hardy performances. It's killer, dude.
Is he wearing a gas mask or something the whole time?
No, you see his whole face.
Fucking weird.
That's probably why he has the full range of Tom Hardy acting tools at his disposal.
Normally cameras can't handle that. They have to cover half of his face.
But the only reason they were able to do it is there's literally no other actors. There's
no
enough. Other actors.
That's the only way you can balance that.
Right. If you had a second face and his whole face,
he would have had to wear like a dust mask or something.
Yeah, they'd give him a bandana.
Because he has allergies or something.
Right. SARS hit London
SARS
really hard.
hit London,
so he's got his little
mask.
like weird germy mask. But yeah, so I guess you can do it. I think this movie, I don't know what the purpose of that was, other than to be like, Locke is incredible. You should go watch it.
the any other movie where you have people,
people just talking in a car.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, actually, to be fair, someone did Jim Jarmusch 1 better and was like, what if there's no passengers? And then they just did it.
It's just someone driving.
It's insane. It's absolutely insanity. All right, so the third segment is Paris.
Gay Paris, yes.
Gay Paris.
Probably, I think my least favorite.
That color's blue. I would say this is my second favorite behind New York.
Interesting.
I
feel like the interesting story got kicked out of the cab.
What?
Yeah.
You are bonkers banana. Okay, here's the actors. Sorry. The driver is Isaac de Bencolet. I didn't write down the names of the 2 gentlemen, the like ambassador people who get booted first, because they're only in the car for like 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Although they have some of the cleverest fucking French pun dialogue I've ever seen in my life. But the blind actress is Béatrice Dalle, and she is... Do you want to talk about her performance really quick?
Sure.
What do you think about it? I have some suspicions on what you think of it.
Okay, no. I thought she was...
She plays a blind woman.
Yeah, so I'm trying...
So
she is...
The driver's driving with 2 guys. They're being really rude and insulting. We will come back to them because they're the writing is so goddamn good.
They're being racist, and he kicks him out of the car.
Right, and then he's driving, and he's all pissed, and he sees a blind woman,
and
he
picks her up
because he's like,
they won't give me shit. She won't give me shit.
She immediately gives him shit.
Immediately
before she's even in the car. So that's basically our.
You almost pancaked me, aren't you? Don't you know where you're driving?
Yeah, like, where did you learn how to drive? You almost killed me, or whatever.
You almost flattened me.
So she gets in the car, and that is that's the start of our drive and conversation. The cab driver, by the way, he's the main character from The Limits of Control, another Jim Jarmusch film.
Interesting.
And he is great in both of them. I really like him in this. But go ahead. Yeah. I want to talk about her performance, and I want to get your thoughts on it. Go.
Couple of things. Again, we touched on it earlier. It's like, I don't, as far as performance, I don't speak French, and she could have been, but the physicality of her performance is breathtaking. And actually, the fact that I don't know this actress, and halfway through this segment, I'm like, is she actually blind? Was the question I had, because of what her eyes are doing. She's not wearing sunglasses, what you normally see in a movie, and actually the cab driver says, don't blind people normally wear sunglasses.
To which her response is amazing. She goes, I don't know, I've never seen blind people before.
But she's doing this thing where she's rolling her eyes almost completely back in her head, where you don't see any pupil or iris or anything. It's all white.
And what you do see like a bare corner in her left eye sometimes, but it's black.
Yeah.
There's no iris that I can see.
That. So I thought maybe she was actually blind.
She's not. No.
She's just doing that.
Yeah.
There's no prosthetic involved or anything. But it's like, I tried I'm gonna try and see if I can do that and how well I can pull that off. After about 2 minutes, the headache that I had from trying to do that was almost fucking unbearable. I'm like, well, props to you, lady. And she, Jesus, that sounded horrible. Props to you, lady.
No, but
seriously,
for real.
Holy shit.
Tip of the hat, yeah.
But she is probably...
Neither of us are urinating. Bird is running water.
I know. Well, it's like, she isn't doing anything overtly sexual, and she's not being sexy, but she is probably one of the most sexy people I've ever seen.
Yep.
It is like, it's like she's not doing anything with her shirt to like draw you. I think the cab driver's reaction, the way he's gawking her in the rearview mirror, is sort of informing you of.
Well, at one point,
that.
she adjusts her shirt.
She adjusts her shirt,
and she adjusts it slowly because she's doing it by feel, and it's the most sensual thing I've ever seen. It's
like, holy shit.
I think it's.
But I also then felt like an asshole because I felt like the dirty bastard that is gawking at a blind woman that doesn't know that I'm looking at her.
Yeah, I think that's very intentional because that's got to be an
holy
intentional.
Shit, I got to not look at her because
it's got to be an intentional part of the performance because I would say from the first time we see her, we get that profile.
Yeah.
And my first and second thoughts in this order was she's the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and the second thought was like, oh God, I can't believe it, because she's blind and you feel guilty watching a
like you're being voyeuristic in a sort of
weird
way.
But she's a fictional character on a screen.
Yeah.
She's not real. This is 1991.
Like, I'm sorry, I was just staring at your breasts, ma'am.
Yeah, exactly. You get weird moments like that, but I would say the level of like unself-conscious erotic.
She's so strong though. Like as a woman, like super. She's not taking shit at all.
No,
from him.
Yeah.
She's blind, and she's enjoying life more than most sighted people.
Right.
In the way that she responds to the cab driver's questions.
But really quick, just on the physicality, she's obviously like conventionally beautiful. Her face is a beautiful face, but the physicality of her performance, her physical, it mostly has to do with her head and her neck.
Right.
But I would say that she maintains a level of unself-conscious eroticism.
Yeah.
Like you said, she's not striking sexy poses. She's
putting on her makeup and adjusting herself in a natural way.
She's like sensuality embodied. What I wrote down was I wrote down mythologically attractive. She's attractive in the way that you read about like Greek gods.
Right.
She would like get into a cab in ancient Greece, and some poet would just like immediately go blind and fall to his knees and be like, "Oh, that I look upon you." You know, like it's like that. So much so that the cab driver turns the light on while she's turning. She's putting on her makeup, and
Did something
she goes,
change?
And she goes, "Did you change something?" And he
That's
goes,
right.
"Me? No, didn't do anything." And he turns the light on so he can look at her.
Yeah.
So he can leer, and that's probably partly why we feel guilty.
Because he is leering and being kind of like douchey about that.
He's a little, he's got that.
But I think his queries are also from a place of honesty. Like, he's never met a blind person. Like I said earlier, it's like, has he never met a blind person? His questions are kind of stupid. And then he says, I've never actually met a blind person before. I'm like, well, I guess that would...
That answers your question.
That answers your question.
But I think that the reason that I think that the sexiness is not an arbitrary choice is the fact that he gets to that question. He asks her, "What's it
like to have sex?"
Yeah, he's like, "What's it like in bed?"
And not knowing who's with you is what I think how he phrases it is like, and she's like, "How the fuck do you?"
Yeah, she's
of
like,
course I know who's with me.
Yeah,
it's my lover. If I choose to ask a person to bed with me, I know who that person
she's
is.
like, "Don't be an idiot.
Don't be a fucking idiot. How do you know who you're sleeping with?" Like,
but yeah, his reaction to her or his that whole conversation about her sex life, essentially, like how she refers to it as, like, she says at one point, like, I make love with every centimeter of my body, and that's kind of what we've been watching this whole time is just
he's feeling every
and we just it's weird, not because she's blind, but because you become aware of like her wrist or her shoulder. Like, normally in a movie, when they show you a sexy... when you show me a sexy girl in a movie, and you're the Hollywood director who's showing me, like, quote-unquote, hot girl,
right?
You're like, face, breast, ass, that's it.
Yeah, exactly. You do the slow pan, or you do the north to south.
And you do the greatest... Yep. Yeah, it's the Hollywood greatest hits. It's like, oh, there's the long legs. That's what we're meant to be staring at. But in this one, there is nowhere to look, because everything is everything is erotic. Shoulder. She does this thing with her head that I loved.
Well, she sort of juts her.
Well, she moves it.
Yeah.
Because her eyes are rolled back in her head in a way that I cannot even possibly do. It's not possible.
No.
I can't do it. I just tried to do it and my eyes are aching. I did it for 2 seconds.
Yeah, it hurts.
So, but she will it's like her head. Her head moves the way that seaweed moves underwater. It floats, but not a lot. It's not like wobbly. She doesn't have a bobblehead going on, but it like drifts slightly side to side and will tip.
That's her catching sound.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down too.
Yeah.
I was like, because when I first saw it, I was like, that's a weird choice.
In the most subtle way.
Yeah.
Because you watch some not as brilliant performances of a blind person, and they will tilt, like full on tilt head towards noise. You know, like, but this is like so subtle. Like, that's a great way of putting that, like seaweed underwater.
She notices when they drive into a tunnel.
Yep.
She hears the click of the light, and something about the light being on now. Maybe it's the electrical hum. She can tell that something's different, and you get the sense that sound is really, really key, and touch, because she puts on her makeup and she smokes a cigarette by placing her thumb against her cheek.
Yeah, so she knows where it is.
So the cigarette goes in the correct spot.
So Danielle, my girlfriend, played a blind person. She was the lead in Wait Until Dark and had to go through a lot of like blind training and stuff for that part.
Yeah,
I can't wait for her to. She didn't see this movie.
Oh,
I can't wait for her to see this. Like,
this is a good
performance.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
this is an actor's movie for sure.
Don't get me wrong, Dee Dee killed it. Like,
yeah,
she did the good acting. But like, for someone that has gone through the experience of having to learn how to play a blind person.
Dee Dee? You saying?
Danielle.
Oh my God.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm like, Audrey.
Sorry.
Audrey D. Hepburn, the one who played this originally? And then I'm like, wait, this girl's name starts with a D at the end too. Dee Dolly? Is he talking about the... Okay.
My darling Danielle.
Darling Danielle.
For an actor, I think this is a great performance of how to do something with subtlety and with honesty in a way. Like, it's so good.
The word I keep coming back to, and I think I like best as a descriptor for this her performance, is unselfconscious.
Yeah.
And
she is just there.
Part of I think what makes her there's a famous quote, Edgar Allan Poe said, what distinguishes a true beauty from a shop window dummy is some strangeness of proportion, which is, to be truly beautiful, you can't look perfect. If you look perfect, you're just pretty. If there's something slightly off about you, it catches the eye and holds it there, and that's what makes true beauty. And for me, for this performance in this actress, it's the fact that she never closes her mouth. She leaves her lips parted for the entire film, and it struck me.
She's got a Madonna gap in her teeth too.
The French have a word for it that means happy teeth.
Oh,
but what it struck me after about 2 minutes of trying to figure out, I'm like, she's doing this. This is a choice to leave her mouth open, because everything she's done so far, constructing this character, has been a choice. So why is her mouth open? And I realized, if you're relaxing and watching TV, your mouth hangs open. So why do we leave it closed normally? It's because you visually see that and you think it makes you look dumb.
Right.
For me, that's why I do it.
Like,
I clench my jaw to make my jawline firmer, and I keep my lips closed because I'm embarrassed by my teeth. But if she's never seen her teeth and never seen her face and doesn't know that people sometimes think that when
she wouldn't even consider that.
So she would be unselfconscious about it, and
you're just comfortable.
And bizarrely, that is what makes her so stunningly beautiful to me, is that unselfconscious, like, little bit of she just lets her mouth be natural. She's not clamping her lips down or like posing. There's no self-consciousness to her at all. She's completely comfortable because she hasn't been taught by society to be ashamed of how she looks. It's amazing.
Yes.
The performance is so goddamn good. So this section, should we talk about the fucking guys at the beginning? They were the most interesting part to you, but I was bored until the blind lady gets in the car.
Fair enough. I think it was more because this followed the New York segment.
Okay.
Where you see they're skating on the surface of racism, where a black man in New York can't get a cab.
Right.
And then you jump to Paris, and it's a black man getting shit from other black men.
Overt racism.
And like, well, where are you from? Like, giving him shit where he's from. They find out he's from the Ivory Coast, and they really lace into him.
Well, they've been talking to like some ambassador.
Right, yeah.
And they say to him, he's driving really fast. A lot of the cab drivers in this drive like crazy people.
Right.
And they're like, well, you drive like you are in the jungle. And then
what jungle are you from?
Yeah, and they say, yours is a different jungle than ours.
Right.
And then they're like, where are you from? And the guy, they're a little drunk, but that does not in any way...
They've been drinking champagne, is what they say.
Yeah.
So sorry, we've been drinking champagne.
And like, oh, don't tell him what's in the case. Like, there's something in the case that's like very, very important, and the ambassador wants to see them, and blah blah blah. And the guy crawls up to the front seat to look at the cab driver's face to try and guess by how he looks where he's from. And there's weird echoes of like World War II era England and Germany phrenology, like that, like the scalp, what the fuck is it called? The pincers, calipers. Like measuring the skull with calipers. That's what it feels like to me. Mm-hmm. It feels like this guy's coming up to be like, let me look at your savage bone. It's so disturbing. Yeah. And I think in part it's more disturbing because it's black men doing it to their black cab driver.
Right.
There's something very uncomfortable. It's racism, so it's naturally uncomfortable.
It's naturally uncomfortable regardless of who's...
But when they find out where he's from, I think it's not just racism, but it's classism as well, specifically because of his retort, the retort that Jim Jarmusch puts in his mouth, which is, this is my cab, this is where I work, like, this is not your, he says this is not your fucking playground.
Right, yes.
Because they're like, oh, we've been champagne, let us have a little fun. He's like, this is not a place for fun.
This is my cab.
They're back there, and their office is in the ambassador's office. Mm-hmm. But he's like, this is my office. You need to be respectful in this space, so get the fuck out of my cab. But there's some French wordplay here, which when I unpacked it, I know I've been talking to one of my coworkers a lot, Nick.
Oh yeah, he speaks fluent French.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's. There are customers now who will speak to me in French because they're used to having Nick, and I'm like, nope,
Can't.
don't have that.
Don't have that. Sorry.
Il ne parle pas bien français.
Right.
But yeah, so I was able, because I've been picking little stuff up from Nick and my boss, whose name I don't want to attach to this podcast.
That's fine.
I've been picking up just enough that I caught the pun before the subtitles did, and I was like, oh my god, it's bad because it's racist, but that's kind of funny, and it's especially. This is what I love about this. When you look at that pun in relation to his second fare and the rest of the episode, or in the rest of this segment, that's genius. That pun is genius because
pun?
Okay, here's the pun. They find out that he's from the Ivory Coast, which in French is the Côte d'Ivoire, and that would be so if he's from the Côte d'Ivoire, he is Ivoirien. So Ivoirien sounds like is a phoneme, or there's a word for it. It's a word that sounds like a phrase or like another word. Okay. Sounds like the three French words: il voit rien. So he's Ivoirien. There's a phrase which is Ivoirien, or Ivoirien, which means he can't see a thing, which is a reference to blindness. So the place he's from, it's hard to say those three words without just saying them. Try and say them distinctly. I don't have enough phlegm. I'm all dry from that martini that I drank. But so the phrase "he can't see," he's blind, or he's sightless, or however you want to translate it, is the same pronunciation if you say it fast as the place that he's from. So that French pun, they're being racist and making fun of him, saying that he drives like a blind man, and he picks up a blind woman. And then we see lots of little shit like this where he turns on a light to see her better. We see how sight-centric his character is in contrast to her. Like when he's asking stupid questions, like
he's always staring at her in the rear view mirror. And
I think it's no accident that his character has a bandage over his eye. It draws attention specifically to his eyes. You're aware of his eyes because there's a contrast near his eyes. So your eyes
directly above his
eyes are drawn to the bandage, which means you're looking at his eyes again and again and again. It's this genius little makeup trick.
And he gets into a fucking car accident at the end,
which she tells him he's going to, essentially. Yeah. I read an interesting thing which kind of made her. They said that she was like an Orphic seer. Yes. She's like a Greek, because like they're
blind, but they can see
There's a lot of mythological characters who are blind, but their blindness allows them quote unquote second sight or whatever. And he tells her to be careful, and she's like, "You be careful.
You be careful."
And then he gets in a car accident like 40 seconds later. It's amazing. But crossing off notes. I did have a note about those racist dudes, though, at the beginning. The black racist guys. Yes, very shortly. So the way that they make... The way that they are racist to him... Because I think of racist in terms of black and white. So when I'm...
Right.
So when I am confronted by this as a viewer... with my limited viewpoint, not limited viewpoint, but with my particular viewpoint, I'm aware of a wide spectrum of racism, but that's not my day-to-day experience. My day-to-day experience is what's constantly shouted at me from the news, which is black versus white.
Yes.
I was thinking because I was trying to find a parallel in the States, because when you look at Africa in particular...
Right. Oh,
there's the whole
continent. It's like
there's like North Africa, South Africa. There's the South African like apartheid structures. Yep. Then you think of the Middle East. Everyone in the Middle, not everybody. I'm obviously generalizing, but in the Middle East, like when you look at Israel and Palestine, those groups of people one is not white, one is not black. They look similar. It's religious differences. Yes. So I was thinking, what's the parallel in the States? And I thought, is this the way that educated Northerners make fun of the South? Like,
interesting.
Well, like, yeah, we're guilty of it. I'm guilty of it on this show when, like, we watched, like, you know, oh yeah, well, I'll tell you what, boy. It's easy to immediately go to, like,
go to that,
right? It's like
stereotype.
Oh yeah, well, when the character drove through Alabama, and there's that guy, and he's like, well, I don't know. I'll tell you, my sister's over there.
Right.
It's you immediately go to, like, that, like, comically idiotic Southerner, but that
would be almost a parallel.
Yeah, I think in a way it is, because that it's not racism, but it's prejudice.
It's prejudice.
It's
and wildly stereotypic.
And you know what's even more stereotypic? You know what's even more disturbing about it, though, is they say it's all in good fun. We don't mean anything by it. That would be if someone was like, you need to stop doing that, like, Southern voice.
Accent. I'm sorry, I'm just playing.
Yeah, that's
just kidding.
That's
around,
immediately.
man.
I'm like, well, it's all in good fun, but that's their argument too.
Yeah,
it really makes you fucking think. I was thinking like people in New York drive shitty.
Yes.
Or there are only hippies in Portland. Like all the dope smoking pothead hippies over in Colorado. Like, it's so easy to do that. And he points out how easy it is to do that. God, the car crash is really funny, but I want to talk about something that the blind woman says to him when he asks her, specifically when he asks her about the film. When he asks her, what could you possibly see at a film? And she goes, like, I don't see anything in a film, you fucking
idiot.
She swears at him so frequently. It's delightful. She's so rude to him. But she talks about something that I think is very close to Jim Jarmusch's heart. As a director, it's this type of stuff he revisits again and again. And it goes back to that sort of like dilettantism or the way that we experience art. She says, sometimes I feel the movie. Like, I can hear it, and then she stops explaining it to him. She's like, I can hear it, and never mind. But it's the way that it's the different ways you can appreciate something. Yeah. Like, going to, like, there are films. There's a famous story. You seem to be a pretty big Kevin Smith fan, so I'm sure you've heard it
absolutely.
too. When he was a young boy, he tape recorded Jaws. He was watching Jaws on TV, and he recorded the thing on an audio cassette tape. So he would walk around listening to Jaws, the movie Jaws, which is just
so amazing, right?
Like, he experienced that movie in a way that I would argue probably no one else has, or like a handful of weird.
It's the John Williams score and the dialogue.
Right, and then you hear like some incidental like scuffling on the boards and stuff. But can you imagine for a second only listening to a film? There are certain films.
It terrifies me, actually.
Jaws is something you could do that to. I think there are certain films where
because you don't see the shark really until the end anyway, so that's not a visual. But even beyond that, though.
Well, and also, I mean, are you a fan of radio plays at all?
Oh yes.
Well, there you go. You could shoot a radio play. Are you gaining anything by putting it on film?
No, nothing.
Not at all.
You're just wasting time and money and resources.
Exactly. I think there are certain things that can be experienced on more than one level, and I think it's an important distinction that she says, I feel the film. That I know. I've watched one opera. I've watched La Traviata. I haven't had time to watch anything else because they tend to be kind of long.
They're a little lengthy.
But in a weird way, which is why I reacted so strongly to it, I would say I think I'm safe in saying that I have felt films. I've experienced films in a way where I've watched them alone, and you sit in a silence afterwards because like you've just been touched in a way that almost nothing can touch you, right? Like you've had it sounds
you've
dumb.
had an experience.
I would say religious experience.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say it, then I'm like, don't say that. But no, on some level, absolutely.
I was shying away from it a little bit too. I just recently read a book. The book is called The Book Thief. I read that, and it took me about an hour to read the last chapter, and I cried for an hour, and I didn't stop reading. I couldn't stop reading.
Right.
And there not everything, like you can spin records all day, and probably I won't shed a single tear.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, like when you hear Adagio for Strings by Barber for the first time,
something moves you.
I remember the first time I heard Adagio for Strings, Bird was cooking dinner, and I was like, I hope she doesn't say anything to me, because I like, it's like you suddenly turn a corner and you're talking to God, is what it seems like. That, I know that sounds extreme, but for people who appreciate art deeply, they'll know what we're talking about. And I think that that's what she's talking about. She's like, yeah, I go and see, but it's the same way that Americans go and see movies now. You go and sit down in the theater, and most of the time you just stare at the screen and you eat your popcorn, and then you
that's loud.
Right, and then you're like, look, oh, crashy robots, and then you walk out.
I do have an appreciation for crashy robots too, though.
Everybody does. But you know what I mean? But those will never change you forever.
You're never going to walk away from a Transformers movie going,
a different person.
God, I think that I need to read more books.
Yeah.
Or listen to more music, or learn about this thing, or just feel.
What he as a director accomplishes, this movie in some sense, Only Lovers Left Alive, much more so. When you watch that movie,
I cannot wait.
Everything you just said, you're probably going to just be like, I can't do this podcast anymore. And devote my life.
There's a couple of movies that I'm worried about, like what they're going to do to me.
This is one of them.
It's Only Lovers Left Alive, because I've read a little bit about it. I'm like, I'm a little scared to watch that movie.
That's why I picked Jarmusch as this. I picked 2 directors for this month. That's why I picked him. Is that movie literally? There are a few. Pulp Fiction. The first time I saw The Godfather. Only Lovers Left Alive. That might be it. I'd have to think about it, but like. I'm not saying like all movies change my life. Some of them really genuinely change who you are as a person. Yeah. So like this film in a weird way makes you want to look longer at art, or look not harder, not strain, but to be more open to it.
That's what what this movie did for me is it made me want to, well, one, watch more Jim Jarmusch movies,
yeah, right.
but also seek out more filmmakers that I have missed.
Right.
Like like Kurosawa. It's been a long time since I've watched Yojimbo or Hidden Fortress or any of it. Like, I need to go and rewatch those movies again. It makes me want to seek out. I want to go and buy Tom Waits records and Neil Young records and the Talking Heads. I want to do deep, long dives with music, and I also want to read more. It's watching this movie has like lit a fire under my ass to like seek out more of the same.
Yes,
in a way,
yeah,
like just
absolutely.
to seek it out and to feel, because what this movie did to me, it's like I said, it's like okay overall, but the fact that this movie exists and how it's written and how it was composed, and the way it left me feeling, and the fact that I watched it twice in 2 days, that doesn't always happen. In fact, very rarely so, unless I'm watching the commentary. But if that doesn't speak to the quality, not even necessarily the quality of this movie, but just to the overall experience that you get watching something like this, that makes you want to seek out more of the same. Outside of its quality. Am I cracking?
No, not at all.
Okay.
You're doing good. I'm just adjusting volumes because now I'm noticing that you are slightly louder than I thought you were, because these earphones are really good.
Oh, perfect.
Outside of the quality of the film is the efficacy or the power of the film.
Mm-hmm.
I would argue that this is not necessarily Jim Jarmusch's best film, but I would say it's one of the most powerful.
Sure.
In that I remember the first time I saw a movie like this and became aware that this sort of thing existed.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like, oh shit.
It's like
this kind of thing is out there. I want to see all of this kind of thing that I can.
It's like you just discovered there's a whole new thing that you didn't know you loved.
Yeah.
And now
that world is open.
It's all there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like I didn't know fishing was so amazing, but there's this whole world of like fly fishing and reel fishing and boat fishing and different kinds of fish and different.
I remember for me there was two big ones, and one is like painting is boring, painting is dumb. I don't like classic art. Who's this Francis Bacon? The first time I saw a Francis Bacon painting, I was like, oh, I've just been looking at the bullshit they show everybody. That doesn't mean that's how all painters paint.
Right.
Go and look at a Francis Bacon painting right now. You will immediately either never want to look at a painting again or dive down the deep
Just go
end.
down the deepest.
Oh my God, yeah. The first time you see an Andy Warhol, that's not his Campbell's soup cans.
Right.
And you're like, oh. Or yeah, don't like his like pop art prints. Look at early Warhol and you're like, what the fuck?
Mm-hmm.
Where is this? Why don't they teach you this? It's because everyone puts, and that's how you get stuff like Hollywood.
Yeah.
Everyone puts validity on a certain type of movie and says, this is a good film. And then everyone tries to make a copy of that. And then you get copies of copies until you have watered down shit.
Yep.
Then you get stuff like Jim Jarmusch, who's like, no, fuck all that. I'm going to make exactly what I want to make. And they're like, well, let's give you some money. And no. How about I just get my own money and then I do exactly what I want to do? And you get real art and it blows your mind.
Yep.
It's like the first time I heard, I really liked Nirvana growing up. Mm-hmm. And then you hear Nevermind and you're like, this is great. And then someone hands you In Utero or hands you like the box set with all their early demos. And you're like, what in the fuck is this? This stuff exists.
Yeah.
It's so much rougher and so much more raw, but it's so much more real.
Yeah.
There's like pain.
It wasn't compressed in the studio somewhere.
And it was perfect in high school too, because Nevermind is all anthems. And it's great. It's a great album. But someone hands you the first time I got the box set for Christmas and I'm listening to it's just Kurt and crew recording on a boombox. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh my God, there are oceans of like pain and angst, which is awesome in high school, that are completely unexplored in that anthemic album that I've been like playing in my car. There's a whole other deeper thing, and that's what this movie is. It's weird that we do these digressions, but they're all completely relevant. I fucking love it completely.
I'm all right with it.
So yeah, this is a thing that he comes back to again and again, is not like you have to go and experience certain types of art. It's just sort of like, and he's not even like telling you like, this is how you should experience art.
No.
It's just...
No, he isn't. Like, watch this movie or not, he doesn't really give a shit, I don't think. He makes Jim Jarmusch makes his movies for him. He makes them for himself.
Right. And I mean, for an audience,
but it's for the audience is going to watch them.
Right. It's like
he's not seeking an audience. The audience is there.
And I don't think he's really tailoring it for anyone. He's like, this is what I wanted to make, take it or leave it.
People that are going to like it are going to like it.
Or even take the parts of it that you like. That's one thing that I really like about revisiting classical music. My dad always liked it, and for me it was always, I called it migraine music, because that's what he'd put on when he had a migraine. But I have all of his old CDs. I have all of his old paperbacks. Like when my dad moved, he was like, I'm getting rid of all this. I'm like, no, this...
Let me have.
Yeah, give me everything. So when you revisit classical music, you realize really quickly that, yes, Beethoven is a genius, but in that 40-minute song of his, it's not 40 minutes of genius. There's a lot of, not filler, but there's there are moments.
Refrains and rephrases, and but then there's those. Yeah,
there's 30-second bits. There's 2-minute bits. When you listen to Holst, there's build up, but the build up is not genius. What's genius is when that build up breaks, and then you're like, holy fuck, Holst is amazing. No wonder John Williams ripped him off so bad.
Shit.
But you realize, like, with this movie, feels like jazz in a way.
Yeah,
it's like Von Newland.
I read that as a comparison, which I get it.
What do you mean?
This movie is more like jazz than anything else, because there's different themes, and some of it's genius, some of it isn't, because there are different riffs. So in jazz, a lot of the musicians will take different solo breaks. Right now, this is the sax man playing. Now this is the piano guy playing. Now this is the drummer playing.
There's even a fun jazz joke in this movie.
Oh, there sure is.
Yeah.
There sure is. So I feel
oh my God, what a great segue. No, go ahead.
I feel like this movie isn't so much jazz as in jazz the like listening to Charlie Parker necessarily. This is more how a group gets together and plays jazz and follow each other,
right?
And sometimes they'll repeat or have moments that they share or riff off of, but each player has their own moment to shine.
Yeah.
Then the drummer might not be your favorite bit in that, but the sax guy might completely be on point that night and blows your fucking face off. Or the trumpet guy is a little off that night, his jaw hurts, and it's like not quite there. That's what this movie is as far as jazz is concerned.
For me, as far as jazz is concerned,
Yeah.
here's how this movie works for me, which is less Charlie Parker, not Mingus, more Miles Davis.
Okay.
Later years, bitches brewing on.
Okay.
This is everyone's up there doing their thing, and they are all 100% on point. The drummer is excellent. The saxophonist is excellent. The trumpet player, fucking spot on. But you're there for the trumpet player. So the moments that shine to you, where you're like, fuck, that's amazing. That's the trumpet player. But my brother's a drummer and really loves jazz drummers. So to carry the metaphor, me and Sam sit down and watch Night on Earth, and I'm like, oh my god, the blind girl in the Paris segment. He's like, yeah, that was okay, but dude, that Italian for him, he sees the drums and he's like, that's fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And what I love about this movie is that it doesn't demand that you like it all, and there's not, this is the moment that all people will like.
No.
It's just, this is everything there is.
It's not universal.
Yeah, it's like, here is the movie, grab what you want. There will be moments that shine for everyone. Like, everyone's going to get something out of this.
Yeah.
But, like, for example, I think you're hitting, as we're talking, there's stuff that's, like, hitting you where you're like, oh my God, that was so great. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, that was pretty good. And then I'll gush about stuff that I like, and you're like, nah, that's where I cashed out. But right after that, so we watched the same movie.
Yeah.
But like, you like the sax and I dig the trumpet.
But because
basically.
there wasn't a formula being followed, we're like, we have to make sure everyone laughs on this beat.
Right.
We have to make sure everyone falls in love with this person on this beat.
I hate to say this, Marvel movies.
Yeah.
When Captain America I don't know if it's Civil War, but when Captain America's holding the helicopter onto the helipad and he's struggling, everyone in the theater is like, look at that. Everyone is there for that.
Yeah.
And then we all sit back as exposition happens.
Right.
This is freeform filmmaking.
I fucking love that.
Me too, man.
Holy shit.
Right? Marvel movies, they'll take you to their climactic moments where everyone, oh my God, Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
End of Guardians of the Galaxy, where everyone joins hands so that they can defeat the big bad. That's everyone's climactic moment. Mm-hmm. Point to the climax in Night on Earth. There isn't one. There is not. This is so fun. This is why I fucking love this movie and movies like this. Because look at what it does to your brain, right?
Yeah, I love it.
All right, so let's extend the jazz metaphor and go to Rome, shall we?
So Rome.
Tannish.
My second favorite.
Tan. The color is tan. I couldn't think of it's like beige, but it's not.
It's taupe, maybe?
Taupe. But you know what's weird is it's perfect. It's all, as I said before, all the colors this is the color of the wall on the clock, which is basically the title card. It reminds you of like the Colosseum and of the the stones. It reminds you of Rome. It's so perfect. But go ahead.
So I love that this starts off with two people fucking on a Vespa. And that's essentially what this whole segment is about, is just Roberto Benigni like confessing to a quote-unquote cardinal who is
a
bishop, right?
He thinks it's a bishop.
He thinks it's a bishop.
And the guy tells him repeatedly it's not a bishop.
I just have to read a couple of my notes because, like, first of all, I feel like
the priest is Paolo Bonicelli, by the way.
So it's like Roberto Benigni has a blind girl's sunglasses. I thought that was kind of funny. It's like, oh, there they are.
There's the blind person's sunglasses.
There's a blind person's sunglasses. They're on Roberto Benigni.
And these sections, by the way, we should touch before these are not utterly in a vacuum. These are not utterly blocked off from each other. They flow together.
They flow right together. Yeah.
Not looking at racism, going straight to racism, blind girl sunglasses and then talking about making love at the end of the Parisian segment, the sex talk, to overtly talking about sex in the Italian section, and then from the sex talk to the death of a priest, next section goes into the death of a child.
Yeah.
It's these sections are not
they all are they flow together.
Yeah, these are not
naturally.
5 short films. This is one film that is 5 distinct sections. But sorry, go ahead, dive in.
All right. So when we follow him around for a while, just him in the cab,
a long time,
just talking to himself a lot.
It's awesome.
Very quickly. And my first thought was like, because I haven't seen this movie, I think Life is Beautiful is amazing. And so I'm always very much aware of Benigni, like his whole, like, he's just a crazy person.
Yeah.
And so I was reminded again, I'm like, oh my God, he's my fucking spirit animal. I love him so much. Like, I just want to carry him around in my pocket and just like, but until we find out that he fucked pumpkins and lambs and his brother's wife. But before we get there, that's just him. The whole segment could have just been him getting lost, turning around, almost hitting a wall, like trying to figure out where he is, talking to his dispatcher.
This wall wasn't here yesterday.
Like I could have just been fine with that. And then he picks up the priest.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh fuck, no. We're on a whole other journey
oh my
with
God.
these
This
two.
section's really long, which I was surprised by.
I think it's one of the longest ones in the...
I think it is too.
You have him talking to himself for the first 8 minutes of it.
Did you time it out?
No, I should have.
It's long though. He's in that car. I would say 10 maybe. He's in that car by himself, just driving around for a long time. And it's long enough that you start to wonder if that's the segment. No customers, because he even says at one point, Rome, the deserted city. And I'm like, oh, there's no one here. We see the lovers twice. I think they're supposed to be different lovers, but it's the same two actors. Yeah.
But really, I don't have a whole lot to say about it, because this is the least that I wrote.
About this section?
About this section, because it is kind of just ridiculous. Like, essentially, his sins kill the priest. The priest has been having issues anyways. He's, like, has heart problems or whatever.
Yeah, I think what kills the priest is that he doesn't get his heart pill under his tongue.
Because he's driving like an asshole.
He's driving like an asshole, yeah. He drives super, super insane right off the bat. But what I love, the first note that I had for this was about the lovers on the Vespa. And I was like, I wrote down, she has a great ass. And then I wrote down, am I allowed to say that she has a great ass? And then I wrote down, she has a great ass. Right. It's weird. The Italian, I think he captures not just the flavor, but like the soul of each city so well. L.A. has that section. It's those two people in a car, and you don't get a sense of the city. But that's right for LA, because it's so sprawled out, and everyone is in their own personal brat race. New York, everyone's got those walls up. We talked about that. Yep. The whole Paris thing, people are like, I was in France for a really long. I spent like a month and a half in France 4 years ago, and based on my experience, that was French people. Like, very curt and short.
Yes.
They're not being...
You were going to say shitty.
I was going to say shitty, yeah. And you know what? That's what I mean. So kind of shitty.
Yeah.
But they don't mean anything by it. It's just
right.
It's just that their culture is like, everyone is very curt and blunt with each other, but they're also very... like weirdly warm once they know you, or if they want something from you. But like, yeah. And then Italy, we get it's insane, like how the sustained force of his performance once he starts confessing his sins.
Oh my God,
that's masterful. Not necessarily all the little beats, which I love, like the ba when he's doing like
when he's doing the lamb.
Yeah, it's like, she comes up to me, bah! And it's not like those other like gross sheep, the bah. It's more bah. It's like him oscillating between that and like the physicality of fucking his wife's or his brother's wife.
I love it's like the not just him explaining like the fact that he fucked the pumpkin and then he fucked the lamb. It's like and then now I can't. So my dad found out that I was having sex with the lamb, so he sold the lamb to a butcher, not even a nice butcher, like the asshole butcher down the road.
Right.
Now I can't eat meat. I haven't eat meat since, and actually I don't eat vegetables either because of the pumpkins.
So he goes, I really don't eat much of anything. But I love when he talks about how he doesn't eat meat. He's like, I don't eat meat. So when people are like, oh, do you want some nice lamb? I'm like, no, thank you. He does like unnecessary dialogue, and you get the sense that that Jarmusch is like the first draft. I would be willing to bet the first draft was twice as long as that.
Probably, yeah.
Because I think he went stream of consciousness and then he whittled and honed and sharpened because it's perfect stream of consciousness. It seems natural, and yet it's stunningly poetic.
It feels like someone that's been holding this in for 35 years and finally decided tonight's the night this is the priest that's going to hear about this.
Yes.
And finally saying all of the stuff that you've wanted to.
He is the Athenor, and this story has been under that constant pressure and heat within him for his entire life. And today it's the heat. He's unsteady how like crazy he is, and you get the sense that he's been made this way by this thing that he's been carrying. Yeah. So tonight is the night that heat cracks the Athenor, and out comes
this story.
It pours out. Oh my God! And it just goes and goes and goes.
It keeps going.
It's amazing. I love that the first thing we hear is English. He's singing The Streets of Laredo, which I only know as a Johnny Cash song, but apparently it's much older than that. Someone else wrote the lyrics. I saw a name in the credits, but I didn't give it enough of a shit to write it down. But yeah, he sings the first couple lyrics of The Streets of Laredo, which I think is interesting because he's in Italy, but we do get that. There is some sense of like Wild West to this.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if that's a nod to spaghetti westerns.
Oh my, that's a bit of a stretch, but not. I mean,
Italy, Rome. Jarmusch is a film nerd. I don't know. Like the first thing we hear him sing is a song about a cowboy. I know by your outfit that you were a cowboy. Is the lyric.
I mean, it very well maybe.
So I'm wondering, man, because
certainly has nothing to do with what we're going to see in the segment at all. Like completely,
other than
out of left field.
Yeah, so I wasn't sure about that, but I would like to think that was a nod to the spaghetti westerns.
Sorry, it's because of the way my notes are.
Go.
So as I said, the way I wrote my notes, I think he's my spirit animal. Yep, he's definitely my spirit animal. Wait, he fucked pumpkins. Wait, he fucked a lamb. Nope, never mind. Not my spirit animal.
Yeah, when he starts confessing his sins to the priest, and I love when he's taught. You think he's going to confess that he had homosexual experience when he was young. I want to point to it again because the writing is so it works so hard to appear casual that when you look closely at it and realize how finely tuned it is, it like breaks your brain. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh my God, everything beats pacing. Every line is strictly
a lot of people thought that he improv'd most of that because he's been known to do that, Roberto Benigni. Mm-hmm. But you're saying that was all word for word what Jarmusch wrote.
I read. I didn't read this segment. I read. I didn't have time. I watched the movie this morning, and then I read the Up Through Paris. Right, so cool. At that point, I didn't read Beyond, but I'm assuming because one of the I read some criticism of not this film but of Benigni, and a lot of people critique people really seem to enjoy early Benigni before he had broken through and made it, because they're like his performance, there's like a weird honesty, there's a truth, there's a like passion, and then eventually he becomes famous as Benigni, and like he starts self-paradising, where he plays Benigni, like how Al Pacino after Scent of a Woman,
now
starts
playing Pacino.
Now he starts being, I'm Pacino. Oh yeah, he turns into
a parody of himself.
He stops being like Al Pacino and starts being Pacino. You know what I mean?
I totally understand.
So. And I think that, like earlier, I had mentioned that I think in a weird way, Jarmusch gets stuff out of actors that other people don't. And I'm wondering, and like we talked about with Nicolas Cage, you need that perfect balance of letting enough slack out. Like I'm sure he improv'd some of this, but I'll bet you from time to time, Jarmusch
is like,
no,
I need you to,
yeah. Like I wrote this really in a super structured way for a reason. Right. So like go off on your tangent, but I need you to say my words too, or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So I don't know, but the rapid fire delivery is what makes it so effective, because he starts with, when you're young and you've got these urges, this urge, you've got to get it out of your body, and there's no girls around, just boys, and you're like, okay, here it comes. He's gonna confess that he's in Italy. We're in Rome. Yeah. And he, I don't know how recently you've seen Coffee and Cigarettes, but
it's been a while.
There are jokes like this in Coffee and Cigarettes where you get a setup to a really obvious punchline, and then he subverts the punchline. There's a bit where there's a section that's Iggy Pop and Tom Waits meeting for coffee in a diner, and Tom Waits is late, and he's like, I've been performing surgeries all day. There's a 4-car pile up and body parts all over the road. And he's like, you're a doctor? Yeah, I'm a doctor. Like, that's how it opens. And you're like, what the fuck am I watching? And then he goes, so we would, we just, me and the other boys, we'd carve holes in pumpkins, make love to pumpkins. And these are like, pumpkins. Huh.
Interesting.
And you're like, okay, there it is. We are done now. And then he's like, but I wanted something that I could look in its eyes. And you're like, oh, maybe he raped a girl, or maybe he... And then he's like, so there was this lamb. And you're like,
what?
Lamb. Wow. Mm-hmm. The best part of this is when he finally gets to a human being, his brother's wife. Yeah, you're like, okay, the human's gonna strike me as normal. It's somehow the weirdest one because her ass reminds him of a pumpkin and her panties remind him of the wool of the lamb. So, and he refers to their sex constantly as fucking like animals, fucking like beasts. And you're like, oh my God, why is this worse? Why is this worse than the pumpkin, having sex with your brother's wife? And he talks about, starts going into like really, really gruesome detail to this priest in the back. Yes. He's like, there was hours and she screamed, and then the priest goes, because he's having a heart attack. One of Jarmusch's favorite films is The Cameraman by Buster Keaton.
Okay.
And Keaton is a huge influence on Jarmusch. And watching this movie, you get the sense that if you bumped Buster Keaton to today, this would be what he would make. Like, think about the priest and the car going around the statue, backing up, going forward. This is like, I always want to.
This is classic.
I'm always tempted to say Charlie Chaplin-esque, but it really is, because Chaplin was like that physical body comedy, but Keaton would be, in my mind, is more like you ever seen The General? The Keaton movie with the train? This reminds me of that, because Keaton interacted with the
environment,
the whole world around him. Charlie Chaplin was so effective because he was... The broad, like, slapstick physical comedy was centered on him, because he had such masterful control of his body and his motions, and he would directly interact with his environment. But in a Keaton film, Keaton interacts with like the whole world.
Right.
Like have you ever seen The Cameraman with Keaton?
I have not seen The Cameraman.
I think it's available to stream for free online. It's really, really funny, but the way that he can break a window with his camera over his back and then turn and knock a vase over with the other side of it as he turns, and then hit someone in the face with the front of it at the same time. It's like
genius.
Yeah. So for me, like the comedy in this, where he's like, "Oh, this wall wasn't here," and
it's
like
all very Buster Keaton-y.
It's very Keaton-y, and that. In that sort of, not broad comedy, but that funny slapstick Laurel and Hardy-esque, where like, and she screamed, and then I screamed, like that shit right there. I think that those influencers are showing.
Oh, they're there.
And yet, while being there, it is a uniquely Jim Jarmusch moment. Yeah. It's so fucking great. I absolutely love, and it would be easy to be like, oh yeah, that's the section where the guy talks about fucking a pumpkin, a lamb, and then his brother's wife. But it somehow transcends the simple slapstick. I mean, dude, we get Weekend at Bernie's at the end of this.
I know, that's I was gonna say, it's like, and it's Weekend at Bernie's at the end. Like, holy shit. One of my funny things.
That less the Weekend at Bernie's, to give him his credit, that is more Chaplin-y to me, where he's I can't get the body. I'm gonna pull the bench, but the bench is stapled down, and I'm gonna get the body.
That was all Chaplin.
I mean, and we get broad moments of like not dumb as in bad, but like dumb comedy, like close the eyes, boing, the eyes open with a sound effect.
Yes,
and it's not a big sound effect. It's like boing.
Yes, it's a boing.
And his eyes pop back open, and he closes them, and then he takes his shades off and puts them on slightly askew. Yep. I mean, come on. And yet, the last shot we see suddenly we've been laughing this whole fucking time. Even when he dies, we're like, God, this is funny, because he thinks that he killed him with his sins. He's like, I'm gonna burn in hell.
It's because he's not. It's that melodramatic
Italian thing.
Yeah.
I read in one of the essays in there that someone thinks that Jarmusch's not Jarmusch's portrayal, but Benigni's portrayal of this character was a commentary on the dumbing down of the Italian male Italian society because of machismo. Like that sort of like being Italian has meant a specific thing in popular culture, so that the younger generations are aping it, and then people are aping it and ramping it up until everyone is like this dumb, fast talking like, and then I fucked my brother's wife and it was like bang, a bang, a bang, a bang. Oh no, the priest is dead. I burn in hell. Like that. That's
become the thing instead of
that. His caricature is a commentary on how some segments of Italian masculinity over there are becoming almost caricatures of Italians. I'm not sure if there's any validity to that. It's just a note. It was criticism that I had read about this piece that I thought was kind of interesting. The hotel genius bit. It seems like a throwaway monologue
But this is also another thing that actually happened to Jim Jarmusch, right? They would drive past this Hotel Genius and talk about what geniuses they thought would be there.
But I didn't know that this had actually happened to Jim Jarmusch. What I took away from that was I like the geniuses that he lists.
So he lists Charlie Parker. He lists Albert Einstein.
He's got Einstein, Beethoven, Isaac Newton, and Charlie Parker. So that right there is dilettantism at its finest. You have an early like physicist basically who discovers gravity. You have the guy who comes up with the theory of relativity. Yeah. You have a classical composer, and you have a jazz musician. They all come from different walks of life. They all contributed to different scientific fields, but he lumps them all in as one. Geniuses. Yeah. But there's a second part to the joke that people, I think, is easy to gloss over. But he makes a joke where he says something akin to like, Charlie Parker, oh, hello, Mr. Charlie Parker, have you met blah, blah, blah? Oh, say something to him, Charlie. And Charlie goes, and he plays saxophone. I think it's in a way, not a critique, but an observation about the nature of genius, which is in order to be a genius, you become so specialized that you cannot communicate outside your field. Charlie Parker doesn't know what to say to Isaac Newton, so he just plays him some saxophone. Like Isaac Newton would probably write some equations or talk about an apple falling out of a tree, or there's hidden codes in the Bible because Isaac Newton got a little crazy near the end of his life. But I think that's really interesting, that to be genius is to be outside, to be other. You cannot communicate effectively outside of what you know, because in order to truly master, master,
has to be your complete focus.
Right. There's to go back to Collateral, an awesome Michael Mann film that everyone should watch.
Yes.
There's a great line in there. There's a great bit where Tom Cruise, Jamie Foxx, and that club owner are sitting together, and the club owner's telling him a story about Miles Davis. And he says, one time Miles was sitting at this chair, and this white guy from, one of my regulars came up with his girlfriend and said, "Oh, Miles, you was great. Could I get an autograph?" And Miles looked up at him and he said, "You get the fuck away from me, honky, and you take your silly bitch with you." But that was Miles, man. He was always on. He was always that. Like, that's the story that he tells, which is that Miles Davis wasn't even a person. Miles Davis was a jazz musician.
Right.
That's a different thing. When you hit that level of virtuosity and genius, you're not really part of mankind anymore.
You transcended that whole thing.
Exactly. And then there's a third part to the joke.
If it's full?
If it's full, if there's no room at genius, I'll take imbecile, which I read as there's a razor thin difference between the two.
Yep.
If I
can't go to there, well, I'll go to the other one.
And you could just as easily be in either.
Yep. I read that the same way.
Oh my God. I loved like every time it's like a 3-stage rocket of a joke. You're like, oh my God, look at all the different people that he thinks of as geniuses, that dilettantism, that like look at that broad acceptance of, and then it's like, oh, and that is actually kind of tragic because
they actually can't speak to each other.
Right. Geniuses are now like these lonesome, like weird, lonesome, isolated creatures.
Yes.
And then it's like, and even if you try, you might end up an imbecile instead.
Yeah.
It's so fucked up. It's like so bittersweet.
And that delivery is in like 14 milliseconds.
Yeah,
how fast he's delivering it.
I was gonna say like 14 seconds is actually probably pretty close. He's just ripping through dialogue. Yeah. He's so fast, so fast.
The subtitles actually have a hard time keeping up sometimes. It's constantly a new
and
something on there.
And also occasionally it will drop lines and just tell you like speaking Italian.
Speaking Italian.
Because either because it's indistinct or because you know what I'm guessing? Because oftentimes they do the subtitles based on a typed out transcript of the film.
Right.
So if I would guess the bits where it says speaking Italian, he went off book and they didn't have a line for him. Because they're like, oh shit, well this next bit is that. What's this thing in the middle? And they just go speaking Italian because he jumped off. In the end of his like big rip roaring thing, when he's talking about fucking his brother's wife, we get the terms heaven on earth, paradise, all my sins were sins of love, and I think and then the priest dies in the back of this dude's cab, and you start to I don't know if everybody does, but the way I watched the film, you start to wonder. Maybe this is also colored by, I do a podcast with my wife called Chapman and Robin, and we're covering a book called Lost Girls, which is a modern treatment of Victorian erotica. So we've been talking a lot about like taboo and like fringe sexuality.
Sure.
You start to wonder if perhaps it's all been worth it for this guy, because he's talking in the language of rapture about fucking a pumpkin. And we're all sitting here and we're like, ew, fucking a pumpkin. But for that guy, he's talking about all of these weird things that he did have culminated in this moment of heaven on earth. And this he refers to it as paradise. And meanwhile, this priest in the back seat has lived his whole life, and probably we get the sense, but from his like don't when he coughs, like don't smoke, he's bothered by the transvestites, and he
hasn't really lived much.
Right. So the maybe what we're seeing here is the transience of life.
Do you think he wish he would have fucked a pumpkin at some point?
I don't think he did, and maybe I don't necessarily want to fuck a pumpkin either.
But that's not the point. No, the point is like having done something.
Is that,
I don't know.
Is that perhaps guilt is a waste of time? Yeah. And it's not like go around and slaughter people for your own amusement, but like if there's something you want to do and it's innocuous.
Well, when they do pull over and they speak to the
transvestite,
they're like, it's always great when he comes by. Like,
I don't know if that word is okay anymore. 1 second. Bird, is transvestite politically correct?
There are transvestites.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's correct.
All right, fair enough.
All right. You never know these days. It just changes so fast.
But like they obviously know him, the cab driver, and they have a great exchange. And they're each of them are kind of having a crappy night, but their mood is improved by having had that little bit of an exchange. So not letting that. The priest is like, oh dear.
Well, he's dying,
and he's
at
also
that point,
dying.
He's like.
But it's like there's something to say about acceptance too, and being able to like improve your night by engaging with another human being,
right? And in a
brief
weird
moment,
in a weird way. Oh my God, you're right. There's even a line about it.
Yeah,
they don't. It's not even a sexual exchange.
No,
but
it is not at all.
Not in the slightest. But when he drives away, one of the transvestites says, oh, I love talking to him. He always cheers. It's either cheers me up or like brightens my night or something like that. And you get the sense that just that little bit of that bit of a moment
put a little bit of an upturn on the
and
night.
Him too. They helped each other out.
Yep.
And you get the sense that those two, I don't know if they're would be considered transsexual. This is weird, but that those two prostitutes that we see are like horrifying and beyond the pale for that priest. they are a thing to be saved rather than humans, distinct people, distinct members of humankind. So, we talked about this on the other podcast when we ran into a couple of issues that dealt with like. There was one that dealt with like foot fetishes. There was one that dealt with a girl who liked to be scalded. And then we ran into an issue that prominently features incest, and we really struggled with that.
Oh yeah, that'd be rough.
That was a really... Oh, transvestite, noun, a person, especially a male, who assumes the dress and manner usually associated with the opposite sex. So that is correct. They are transvestites. Thank you. So... in a weird, not the incest one, I can't even become close to resolving. But as far as the other stuff we were running into, like the foot fetish stuff, and there was one where there were like drugs, and there's lots of lesbian sex, and we keep coming back to like life is short, and if everyone is on the same page and okay with it, and you're cool with it, and it's something that you want to do. Go for it.
Fucking do it.
Yeah, so in a weird way, when he's like, I fucked a pumpkin, I'm like, not my thing, but good on you, buddy.
No one got hurt.
Right, and then, I mean, maybe your brother.
Well, the lamb, though, didn't have any say.
Yeah, the lamb, that's not okay. We're going to say...
I'm going to say no.
That's
on the
a
lamb.
bad one. That's a don't do that.
And, it's not nice to fuck your brother's wife, but if she was consenting, like, whatever.
Yeah... That's more of a gray area. I think, like...
I don't agree with it.
It's a dick move, for sure.
For sure. But someone could potentially get hurt, though.
Yeah, but, the weird thing is, like, it comes back to those couple of lines, that paradise, that heaven on earth, sins of love. Is there a distinction between a sin of hate and a sin of love? Yeah, like murder, destruction, like... There are definitely, like, no one is going to defend, like, going out and cutting up somebody that you don't like.
No.
But, like, I was so passionate. I loved her so much. I love my wife, too, but I had to, and it was one night, and it was heaven. She was radiant. It's weird that such a slapstick, funny bit of comedy should have something so heavy buried in it. It's like the LA segment when Corky and Vanessa or Victoria are talking to each other and they're like, oh, I want to be a mechanic. But really, it's like, you're old and you missed your chance.
Right.
Every line is 2 lines, and I think this is no exception. And this one is particular. This was my least favorite until I started talking about it, and now I'm not sure.
Right.
Because on the surface, this is rapid-fire slapstick comedy, but it's addressing issues of faith and guilt and sin and culpability and the transience of life. And
I don't think you could have addressed these heavy things without
the laughs.
That laugh, without a clown delivering it.
Oh, our second clown.
Yeah.
Our second clown cab driver.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's not that Jim Jarmusch can't deal with heavy material.
No, not at all.
Speaking of heavy material, do you want to move on to...
Shall we? Oh, just one funny little side note. Yep. I don't even know if it has anything to do with anything except we mentioned Weekend at Bernie's. So I used to live in Baltimore, and one of my roommates, one of his favorite movies is Weekend at Bernie's.
Okay.
But he doesn't speak French. No, none of our friends do.
Okay.
But one day he accidentally got his DVD copy of Weekend at Bernie's stuck in the French and couldn't get it off, but he just kept watching the whole movie.
Uh-huh.
So now there's a yearly party at his house where you go and you watch Weekend at Bernie's in French, and it's fucking hilarious. It's Bernie, 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 Bernie. It's like the weirdest fucking thing.
Oh my God, are we? Should we bring this tradition west?
I think we should. I mean, Chaz Phillips would be so proud.
Wow, Weekend at Bernie's in French.
In French.
Bernie,
Bernie, Bernie.
Oh my God, that sounds delightful.
It is. It's quite fun, and you have to drink every time.
They say Bernie.
Bernie.
So you make it 5 minutes into the movie.
It's 5 minutes. You're fucking hammered. And then you watch Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Do you know who else is hammered? The 3 guys that our cab driver picks up in the next section.
They are the drunkest trio I think I've ever seen on film.
That, again, you know what? Oh my God. There are 2 physical connecting points at the beginning. Okay, the next segment is Helsinki. It's this weird purplish lavender blue. Helsinki is the capital of Finland, for those of you who don't know. I'm going to hit these names. Are you ready?
Do it up.
I'm so ashamed because several of my relatives speak Finnish.
Oh, shit.
I'm like 99% Finn. So this is going to be, they're going to hear this and
Painful.
be like, oh, Max.
Oh, man.
What happened to you? All right, so our driver is Mika. This is Mutti Pelampa. Then we have 3 passengers. We have Kari Vananen, Sakari Kosmanen, and Tomi Salmala. That's not.
I mean, it sounded perfect to me.
Not horrible. I'm sure they're like, it's not. Salmala is probably the best I got. And I know that this word is actually pronounced Mutti because my dad's name is Matt. Oh. But in Finnish, his name is pronounced Mutti.
Mutti?
Yeah, they call him Mutti Gentila. Oh. Anyway.
I just went, oh.
Like you knew what Gentila meant? Yeah, Matti Kumasauna. He's that's the sauna king.
Oh.
Sauna king Matt.
I keep going, like everything
God.
is so adorable.
You said a Finnish word. No, but yeah.
Aki, though, is the drunk one, right? The one's completely passed out.
Yes, also named after a famous Finnish film director. I wrote down some of his movies elsewhere because I want to go and watch them. It's so weird when you run into anything in like essays on Jarmusch's movies or film criticism or whatever. If anyone mentions a film in relation to Jim Jarmusch, I'm like, I guess I got to watch that.
Right.
There's one Moi un Noir or something like that. It's a like French film. Yeah, I'll just give you the list. I compiled a list of authors and shit.
I count on you for all my list making.
Oh my God. Yeah, we're gonna. You best believe there's some art house in your future.
I love it. Aching for it.
So we get 2 bits of echo. We get 2 echoes from Rome to Helsinki. The first is when he drives in a circle around that monument. We just saw another driver do that. So these are not distinct from each other. They're connected. And then in the last moment of such in the film, we get a hilarious moment of physical comedy, which we've just watched a whole segment of over-the-top physical comedy. Yep. And then when he goes to pick up his fares and they're all sleeping on each other, standing up,
sleeping on each other.
And when he honks the horn, the 2 separate and the middle one hits the ground. Yeah. And that's pretty much the last funny moment in this fucking whole thing.
No, I disagree.
Am I missing something?
It's the reaction. I find there's humor in these big, burly, drunk.
Yeah, there's something fun.
that are crying because you find out that of these 3 drunk guys that get picked up, one of them lost his job that day. He got a severance package. His wife tried to stab him with a knife. Got kicked out of the house. He's having the worst day of his life.
You realize what this is, by the way? This piece of writing that Jarmusch does. It's a Shaggy Dog story.
Oh yeah.
He literally writes a Shaggy Dog story and then has the cab driver be like, "Is that all?" And then tear your fucking heart out.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen it done better. It's amazing.
It's amazing because you get the sad story, the Shaggy Dog story,
which is like,
oh, it's kind of sad and fucked up.
He lost his job. Is that it? And he's like, no, he bought a new car, and then he lost his job, and they kicked him out, and they threw his severance pay, and then his car was trashed, so he caught a bus home. When he got home, his wife was like, "Your daughter's pregnant." His daughter ran away, and he told her that he lost his job, so his wife asked for a divorce, and then chased him out of the house with either a butter or a bread knife or a butcher's knife.
We can't be sure which.
So
and you're like, fuck, that's like the worst. And then the cab driver's like, is that all that happened?
And they're like, what's your big horrible story? And they're like, how could it have been worse?
And then tells the most honest and heart-wrenching and slowly paced. It's like, I can't even.
And it's the contrast between the 2 stories. The delivery of them. And the acting styles. Because you have 3 big drunk Finnish dudes in his car. And the one up front is kind of like, he's got long hair and he looks rough. He looks like 20 of my family members. But he's like, "How could it get worse, you fucking cab driver, man? Well, let me tell you. First he lost his job, and then he gets thrown out, and his car is now a big pile of shit." It's like someone is telling you a story and they're hitting the beats and then there's a lull. And now we're going to get to a crescendo. It was a butter knife or a bread knife. And when the cab driver starts talking, he's like, it is the most naturalistic acting you've ever seen in your life. It's so utterly believable, so human, so fully rounded.
Even the way he lights and smokes his cigarette is
despondent.
Yeah.
It is the if you were utterly hopeless, it's how you'd light your cigarettes.
Yep.
It's amazing because he's like, well, my wife and I have been married and trying to have a family for a while. She works one job, I work two. And then they bust his balls. They're like, oh, 2 jobs, what a heartache. Or no, when he says, I'm married, they're like, oh, my God, that is terrible. Ha, ha, ha.
Right.
And he keeps going.
He keeps telling a
story. And
story.
his story is literally just like, my wife got pregnant and she said at 6 months that she started to feel a little strange, so I brought her right to the hospital. He's not doing like, and then I brought her to...
He's just telling it very earnestly, just like...
He's not... He eventually like starts to break down, but he's not like hitting... You could have done... The performance could have been, at 6 months, she began to feel a little strange.
Right.
You could have done that, but it's... So I brought her right to the hospital, and the doctor came out and he said my wife was fine, and I was overjoyed, but the baby was in an incubator, and it's matter of fact, and the way that the way the story is stretched out and delivered, the guy's not crying, he's not breaking. So you're like, you wonder, you don't know whether the baby is alive or dead
don't know until
he says it's dead.
Yeah. And he said he's like, and I didn't know if my baby was going to live or not, so I decided I couldn't deal with the pain of it, so I decided I couldn't love this baby.
So I had to kill my love. And he talked
for the baby, not kill it, but like the love that he had for it.
His love for the child. He had to kill that love in himself. Not allow himself to hope and kill his love, because the doctor gave the baby a week.
Yep.
But then it was 2 weeks. But it didn't matter.
Things are getting better.
Well, it was 2 weeks was when he decided that he had to kill his love for the child because it wasn't going to live. And so that line, oh my God, when he's like, I had to kill my love, the way he delivers it.
And that's when he pulls out his cigarette and lights it.
And also, neither of us speak Finnish. No. I've heard Finnish my whole life, so maybe I'm able to pick up inflections better. I kind of doubt it. I remember out at camp, there was a channel we used to watch. The channel, there was 2 programs on in the early morning that were entirely in Finnish for the Finnish population of the Upper Peninsula. So we'd be out at camp and Grandpa would turn on.
Here it is.
Yeah, and they'd be like, it's like a baking show, and they'd teach you how to make birdhouses, and they'd go like out in the outdoors.
Sounds amazing, actually.
And it was just in Finnish, so that the Finns who didn't speak English would have that taste of home.
Morning.
It's really cool. But anyway, like we cannot possibly do justice to his performance.
Not at all.
Where he talks about the baby now has been living 3 weeks, and my wife came in to me and said that I had made a mistake, and I realized this baby will need all my love.
All of my love.
So now you're like, oh, is the baby going to live?
He's be okay. And then he's like, and so I loved
the baby.
More than
and he talks,
anything.
It's in a weird way, it's an echo of Helmut, because we see him, we hear secondhand the moment when he let hope back in.
Yes.
He crushed himself down to despondency, where he was like, I was dead inside. I had given up completely on this child, and I did not love it. And then his wife was like, you have to love this child or it's going to die. And he goes, and I loved it, and I felt such relief. I felt such joy. And this is where he starts to crack just a touch. Mm-hmm. And then they go into the hospital. He says, we went into the hospital, and the doctor was waiting for us, and he took us aside, and he told us that morning the baby had died. And the way he delivers it, you're just like... and
like just soul crushing.
What really gets you, though... Because you got to remember, these are not 5-minute sections. These are like half hour.
Yeah.
These are long. And then we have been on him the whole time.
And you cut to the
guys, these boisterous drunks, and the one in the front seat is crying.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Because they're telling their friends' misfortunes, and they're being all funny and slapstick. They're cracking jokes. And then once that guy starts telling his story in earnest, we cut to him and stay on him. It is beautiful. We've talked about it before. I'll keep talking about it forever. I love it when a director puts a camera on somebody and lets him
go. Yes. One of the best things that
he is an actor's director, 100%, because he knows I'm getting chills talking about this scene. But he knows when his actors, he trusts them, and he knows, like, he could cut and he could show us Helsinki. He could show us, like, the bright lights of Helsinki as the baby's recovering, and he could show us, like, a dark stock, but he doesn't.
He stays right on him.
He stays right.
Time.
Yeah. We just watch this. And the best part is this driver he's on a trailer for sure. The car is on a trailer being dragged because of, I think it's like insurance reasons. You can't have your actors actually driving and delivering dialogue because it's irresponsible because they're not focusing on their driving. But he's pantomiming driving perfectly. He's like making turns, and he's like
his eyes, how they track his turn.
Yep, he tracks his turn. He's looking at signs. He's checking his mirrors.
Yep.
When he lights his cigarette, he does that thing where you look down, but you're still watching the road. And then you look up. His performance is amazing, and Jarmusch knows it and stays on. Just locks on him, and he's like, "Okay, guys, watch this." It's fucking. That's the mark of a director. They're not trying. They are not. When a director is showing off, they're cutting all over. When a director is letting
the scene play and the actor do their job.
Making decisions in service of the film rather than in like, oh, and check out that slick whip pan I just did, or whatever. Like, so he puts on this guy, and you know what? By letting us stay still for so long, when we get a cut, the cut itself surprises you.
Well, then I also realized I hadn't taken a good full breath in about 3 minutes.
Fuck yeah, dude! You're just sitting there on your couch, and it's. The weirdest thing happens in this one, in particular, this one in New York. You smile, you laughing. The Shaggy Dog story in here, how his buddy's bad day or whatever. Like, it's funny. You find yourself like smiling
and chuckling and how
like hapless Maki is. Where he's just like, he's like falling asleep at the wheel when we first see him. He's driving around in circles, and he plays perfect straight man to their drunken buffoons.
Oh, absolutely.
Where he's like, where do you want me to take you? Take us home. Where is home? And then they have that big argument where they're like, you're gonna drop me off first. No,
we all live in the same neighborhood.
Well, no, he's like, we have to drop him off first because he's our friend. He's drunk, but he lives the farthest away. Oh no, he's our friend. We're gonna drop him off first, then you, then me. And he's like, where am I going? We all live on the same block, so it doesn't fucking matter at all.
Yeah.
So like, there's moments of like humor and funniness, but then as soon as the script lets Maki off the chain to tell his story, you get such a shift. Where, just like in the New York one, you find yourself like grinning at the screen, and you're like, geez, this is fun.
Yeah.
And then you can point to the exact moment where your smile just disappears off your face.
Completely gone.
It's amazing.
And you stop breathing.
And you know what's weird is it's still technically not plot.
No.
The plot is the driver picks 3 drunk guys up and brings them home.
Yeah.
That's the plot of every single one of these sections.
Doesn't really matter.
Not at all. I love, and you, oh my god, I love it. You say that to the wrong person, and they're like, "Oh, what are you talking? Some of the best American novels are finely plotted masterpieces." And Jim Jarmusch is showing you that there's another way, and Kevin Smith, and the Miramax '90s kids, they're showing you that. Okay, and it's in a weird way. I equate them with the Beats. I don't like any of the Beats. I don't like Jack Kerouac's books. I like William Burroughs, his story and the idea of him, but I actually don't like his writing. His poetry is okay, but like as far as the Beats go, I think that they are masturbatory and excessive, and they violate the rules for the sake of violating the rules rather than servicing their own art. But I think the Miramax, I call them the Miramax kids, but those filmmakers, those late, like those 80s and late 80s, early 90s Miramax filmmakers, those people of that oeuvre, that particular zeitgeist reacted against film that came before, but not for the sake of reacting against something.
They wanted to make movies.
They wanted to tell their stories their way. Yeah. And it wasn't like, well, you tell me that I can't do a 20-minute tracking shot, well then fuck you, I'm going to do it. It wasn't just to break the rules. It was because the rules didn't allow them to tell their story their way.
The way they wanted to, yeah.
And that's why those artists resonate with me.
Yeah.
In a way that the Beats don't. I like the idea of the Beats, but I don't like their art. I love the idea and the follow through with especially Jim Jarmusch.
It's an amazing thing that happens when you talk at length about movies like Night on Earth. Like, a couple hours ago when we sat down and started talking about this.
Yeah,
movie.
this is by far our longest episode.
Well, I don't give a shit.
I'm gonna release both halves of this on the same day.
Yeah.
Just so you know, we are about 5 minutes away from 3 hours.
Holy shit.
But it's fucking. There's no way to make this shorter.
It could be 5. I don't care. Like, because something has happened in this 3 hours now of us talking about this. One of the first things I said sitting down. And that's why I think film is such an interesting thing, because watching it is one part of it. Thinking about it afterwards is another part of it. And having a conversation with somebody about it is another part. It doesn't stop. It's like it's a thing that's like alive. Like it's a thing that's constantly in your brain. Once you've seen it, it's in your brain.
Right.
It's now part of who you are as a person, which is really interesting. But like having a 3-hour conversation and unpacking these movies like we do, like I was questioning whether or not I liked this movie because I thought I was supposed to, or did I actually really like this movie because of how it affected me and the quality of the acting and the writing. Yeah, I had some like minor issues with like Winona Ryder and her performance, but we sort of touched on that too. It's like, well, that's kind of that 90s thing. That's that character type,
right?
And how it's servicing the dialogue in a way. It's serving it to you in that fashion. Mm-hmm. This movie is fucking shit.
This movie is fucking shit.
This movie is fucking shit. No. It's brilliant. I'm so glad that I found Jim Jarmusch. Like it could be like. It's not going to be for everybody.
Right. Yeah. There's a certain set of people for whom this movie.
Well, how do you talk for 3 hours about a movie?
That's not 3 hours long.
It's not 3 hours long.
No, this movie's 2 hours.
You talk for an hour longer than the movie.
An hour
is.
longer. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. I like that you broke it down into 3 categories where you watch a movie, you think about a movie, and then the third component. Almost nobody does this.
Almost nobody talks about. Yeah.
And to be honest, what we're doing is fairly unnatural. We have microphones in front of us for recording it and sharing it. So, but sitting down with somebody and having a deep discussion about a piece of art, like we could do this for Batman Begins, and we would appreciate Batman Begins more, or we would. Maybe, like, for example, I appreciate Prisoners slightly less because you showed me some of the flaws, but it changed the way I thought about it, and it changes the way that you think about art. Like, especially with this film and this director, which is why I'm glad I picked him and his movies, is we've talked about Beethoven, we've talked about visual arts, we've talked about film as an audio medium. Those conversations, my notes. I have my notes in front of me, but when we do these episodes, over half of the stuff that I unpack and throw out on the table, like I can't remember what it is, but today. It was there was several of them, but one of them was, oh my God, is Streets of Laredo a nod to spaghetti westerns? I don't have those thoughts until I say them to you.
Right.
As we're conversing,
those thoughts happen.
Yeah, like parts of the movie unlock.
Yeah.
So if you're just sitting on your couch and thinking, you're like, that's a great movie. But I guarantee you sit down and you have a long-form conversation where you explore the nuance of some particular art.
Popcorn's going to pop in your brain. Man.
Yeah, it's so weird. There's a lot of stuff in this conversation that I did not have in my head before we started. It's not just us regurgitating notes. We're learning what we think about this through these conversations. And it's I honestly genuinely feel like not just the heady ones. The last 2 we've done have been real heavy.
Shit.
But I just feel this whole season, even talking about Drive Angry, even talking about The Jacket, I feel like up to now, I have a different appreciation for film, and not just film, but all art across all mediums and genres.
I'm starting to dig into other things. Like I'm going to the record store on payday and buying Tom Waits records, and like seriously,
absolutely.
Like, shit, it's expanding my horizons on so many different levels. And as an actor too, actually, I'm looking at my own performances or my choices that I make, or like even some of my quote unquote fucking process, right? Like,
well, when you see such a wide, such a variegated group of performances, you can't help but look at everyone is doing it differently. You grab what you like,
and you kind of feel like comfortable with like, oh, I can do it my way, or like not my way, but like there is no wrong way of doing it.
Right. I mean, what do we get from Nicolas Cage is that sometimes it's good to make bold choice. It's better to make a bold choice and be reined in than to deliver a flat performance and have to be beefed up.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much to grab from performances in here because everyone seems to be doing it differently. It's amazing. Yeah. It's an amazing kaleidoscope of performances. I only have one more thing for Night on Earth. It's my last note, which is the gorgeous final shot of Aki
sitting on the ground, fumbling with his money packet, his envelope,
severance pay. He is in
the best drunk I've ever seen, or not even drunk, like getting coming out of the blackout.
Yeah, he does. There's no Nicole Kidman. No. But yeah, this is the best. This is one of the best drunk performances I've ever seen. But what I noted was cinematography, which is he's near a street light. So there's like an orb or an area around him, which is slightly warmish in color. It's not warm, but it's like there's a touch of like yellow or orange and the sun is just coming up because we started with sunset in Los Angeles and we get sunrise in Helsinki. And God, what a great line, by the way. Are you going to be all right? Do you know where you are? And he goes, yes, Helsinki.
Not home.
He doesn't know where he doesn't.
In Helsinki.
He's not in home. He's in Helsinki.
Yeah.
Just fuck. That line just hit me so hard. But anyway, like he's in a warm bit of color on the screen, and all around him is like utter freezing cold. So I looked at that, and he's sitting there on the ground, and I wrote down, the ending is not up or down or hopeful or bleak. It simply is. And I think that is a great way to look at this movie.
Oh, and even like the two neighbors of his come out of their house to go to work and like, hey, Aki.
And he's like, hey.
I
don't, because I was trying to figure out, I'm like, is this a downer ending? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Is it a hopeful, like upbeat ending?
No.
Nope. It's
just an ending.
Yeah. Jim Jarmusch is, again, he's just showing you something that is.
The guys got dropped off.
Right.
Like, you know, this guy, does he get back to, I don't know, he's sitting there, he has a severance packet in his money, and fucking helmet is still lost in Brooklyn. Like,
is it as easy or fun as being like, Wakanda forever, man? Oh man, it's so, because they think they're goat herders, but they're not. They're really technological. Oh, that's an up ending.
Yeah. You love that ending. Yeah. And you go out of the theater and you're like, holy shit.
Right. The ending of The Machinist, that's brutal.
Yes.
This is just, it just
like,
is.
It's fiend.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, what a perfect way to end a Jarmusch discussion is just fiend. Yeah. That's literally it. That's how this movie ends. I've got nothing else on this at all, but God damn.
Yeah.
Two great fucking movies.
I know. And what two completely different, complete visual auteur and like the actors, writers, director, like
same director of photography,
same DOP. Holy shit! Looks like you got a note card there, Max.
Way to go, Monsieur Frederick Els. Yes, we. Oh God. It's hard to shift gears sometimes, especially when you go that deep. And do you feel like after the end of the Eraserhead episode?
I felt weird. I had those rough couple of days.
I did not sleep. I slept like 10 minutes at a
Danielle
clip.
was like, "Honey, are you okay?" Like I was having nightmares and not breathing. Like,
absolutely not okay.
My apnea came back for the first time in like 2 fucking years. Breathe, damn me! I'm like, I'm sorry. No, I was fucked up.
Yeah, and oh God, it's just that movie rewires your head. This movie rewires your heart.
Yeah. Aww.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right, though. Rewire my fucking soul is what it did.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to shift gears. Here we go. So, we are a listener-supported podcast. It feels so fakey and cheap.
Doesn't it? I don't even want to do it.
Neither do I. Let's shout the patrons out. I'm not even going to point anyone to anything. Just take this for what it was.
Yep.
Like the movie that we gave you. We're going to thank our patrons because they help make it possible for us to have breakthroughs like this.
Yeah.
So, let me thank John Scheibe and Casey Scheibe. over in New York City, where Jim Jarmusch got his start. So you guys are in the heartland. And we also, as always, need to thank
the one, the only Connor Sweeney.
Oh my God, Connor Sweeney.
I know. I actually ran into him the other day.
Did you?
Yeah, a volunteer party for the Old Town Playhouse. He was there.
What was he doing there?
He's a volunteer.
Was he volunteering as
a?
I know he has a long checkered history as a security guard.
He does. Well, he was actually
former Secret Service,
checking IDs at the door.
Okay.
But not very well.
Did you present him with your fake?
I did. 2 fakes at the same time.
And he didn't pick them out.
Didn't either one.
That's weird because
one was Susan Sarandon.
And he
do not look like Susan,
at all.
Like clearly,
not
don't.
Even your hair's similar, but
and the actual like the Sean Connery James Bond ID.
Oh, his MI6
his
ID.
MI6 ID.
And he let you in and was like,
he was more impressed by that one. He's like, I really appreciate your work, sir, and all that you do.
And you were like, awesome, you shouldn't be at the door. I went into, at least you tried an impression.
I
had a Poets Night Out event, and Connor was working the door there. I gave him, I went in, and he was like, are you one of the poets? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, I'll need to see your ID. And I handed him my fake ID, in which I'm a 96-year-old black woman. And he was like...
Did it get past him as well?
Yeah, and he was like, I guess you're good to go. And I was like, thank you very much.
I guess you're horrible at your fucking job, Connor Sweeney.
That is what it appears to be. And you know what? It's a good thing that he got kicked out of the Secret Service. I wish they'd release the papers on why that happened. And
they won't.
Of course they won't.
I mean, they're locked up tighter than like other papers that are important.
Look, we're all thinking it. I'm going to say it.
Do it.
If it wasn't for Connor Sweeney, John F. Kennedy would be alive today.
Oh my God.
Anyway. That's
holy shit.
That's all I've got. So, let's So Carl Hartley, Max Peterson. There's only one way to end this podcast, and that is with a fiend.